Chapter 663. 663 The appearance of the flood dragon. In fact, the more the battle raged on, the more disadvantageous it was for the humans. This was because there were more peak-tier king-level sea beasts than humans. Among them, there were many powerful descendants. For example, although Lu Ming could kill the Silivera tiger shark, it was a nightmare for other peak-tier kings. We have to kill more peak-tier king-level demonic beasts. Otherwise, it'll be more and more disadvantageous to the human race. Lu Ming swept his gaze across the entire venue. He didn't need to worry about Xian Yanqing. As long as he was in the spiritual ocean tier, Xian Yanqing would not be in danger. Lu Ming took a step and his figure disappeared. The next moment, he appeared beside a peak-tier king tiger shark. He thrust his spear and killed the tiger shark. Then, he took another step and killed the next peak-tier king tiger shark. He didn't attack the other tiger sharks, choosing to attack the peak-tier king-level ones. Hundreds of miles away, two old men were being completely suppressed by a Silivera tiger shark. These two old men were also two old monsters in the nearby sea area. They had lived for hundreds of years and were extremely powerful. However, even when the two of them joined forces, they were not the opponent of this Silivera tiger shark. They could not even break the defense of the Silivera tiger shark. The Silivera tiger shark was not afraid of death and kept attacking the two. Bang! One of the old men was hit by the tail of the Silivera tiger shark and was sent flying for thousands of meters. He spat out a mouthful of blood. This kind of descendant is too strong. We're not its match at all. The other old man quickly retreated. However, the Silivera tiger shark was in hot pursuit and could not escape at all. Don't tell me that I'm going to die in the mouth of this beast today. The old man sighed. Although he tried his best to resist, he was still hit by the Silivera tiger shark and spat out a large mouthful of blood. His body was constantly sent flying. I'm going to die, the old man thought to himself. However, at this moment, a black-robed figure wearing an Azura mask suddenly appeared beside the Silivera tiger shark. A terrifying long spear pierced through the head of the Silivera tiger shark. Blood splattered everywhere as the Silivera tiger shark was killed. Then, the figure slapped the wound of the Silivera tiger shark and disappeared in a flash. The old man was stunned. What a powerful attack! The old man who had been whipped away by the Silivera tiger shark's tail flew over, his eyes full of amazement. They couldn't break the defense of the Silivera tiger shark even if they tried their best, but this figure had killed it with one spear strike. This attack power was really terrifying. This man should be the rising expert on the life battle platform. His name is Azura, and I heard he's a young man. The old man in the back spoke as if he had just woken up from a dream. Heroes really come from youngsters. The old man from before sighed. Let's go. We'll go and kill those ordinary peak-tier tiger shark kings, the old man behind said. The two of them then charged toward the two ordinary peak-tier tiger sharks. The one who had killed the Silivera tiger shark was naturally Lu Ming. He naturally didn't know what the two old men were thinking. At this time, his target was those peak king-level tiger sharks. In just over 10 minutes, he had already killed 16 peak-tier king-level tiger sharks. What a strong power of blood essence. It's too strong. The blood essence of 16 peak-tier tiger shark kings was too strong and incomparably rich. The power of blood essence of demonic beasts was usually richer and stronger than that of humans. Lu Ming continued to kill as he refined. This time, he continued to use the power of the blood essence to improve his second bloodline. When his second bloodline reached the 8th level of the king level, the mist on the stone stele seemed to have faded a little, and the words on the stele had become clearer. There were 3 words on the stone tablet. The first word was suppress. The third word was tablet. Only the second word was a little blurry and could not be seen clearly. Lu Ming had a feeling that as long as his second bloodline advanced to the 9th level of the king level, he would be able to see the second word clearly. At that time, he might have unexpected gains. Lu Ming hunted peak-tier king demonic beasts while refining his blood essence. On the other side, a figure wearing a Yama's mask was shining with a golden light. The golden light was flashing, and every time it flashed, a peak king-level blood shark would be killed. He was killed in one strike. Similarly, wherever Xian Yanqing went, sea beasts were killed one after another, regardless of their level. Lu Ming charged and killed for a while. He had already killed more than 20 tiger sharks, a peak king. At this moment, he had killed his way out of the tiger shark's territory and into the sea lion's territory. There were also descendants of the sea lions who were extremely powerful. However, they were still killed by Lu Ming with one shot. Not long after, Lu Ming had devoured more than 30 peak-tier king-level demonic beasts' blood essence. Hualala. At this moment, the sea water churned and rushed towards the shore. In the sea, there were countless huge figures circling. They were actually huge sea snakes. Each of them was dozens of meters long and their bodies were thicker than a water tank. They opened their mouths and swallowed a warrior. With a twist of its body, a martial artist was bound to death. Deep sea giant snake, it's a deep sea giant snake. Someone exclaimed. What's going on? Another race has appeared. This is too abnormal. How can this be? Ah, watch out. Screams and shrieks of pain were heard everywhere. Hualala. And NBSB, the ocean churned, and everyone saw two giant snakes in the water. Their wriggling bodies were more than 100 meters long, and their powerful auras were astonishing. With a swing of its tail, a large number of martial artists were hit by the tail and directly exploded. Even peak-tier king tiers were the same. They didn't even have the power to retaliate. Shape-shifting great demons. These two giant deep-sea snakes were shape-shifted great demons. With two transformed demons equivalent to the spiritual ocean tier taking action, the human side was showing a one-sided trend. Evil creature, you're looking for death. In the air, the spiritual practitioner Han Dao had not made a move. At this moment, he shouted and stepped forward, walking towards the two transformed demons. Whoosh! Whoosh! A snow-white blade light flew out, and every blade light that flew past killed a giant deep-sea snake. When those blade lights flew into the sea water instantly solidified and turned into ice, freezing a large number of giant deep-sea snakes in the ice. Peak third-level spiritual ocean tier. One of the deep-sea giant snakes said in a serious tone. Since you know, die. The spiritual being Han Dao's aura was magnificent. Two snow-white blade lights slashed towards the two giant snakes. Old man, I'm your opponent. The waves behind him churned, and an incomparably huge figure rushed out of the sea. Roar. The roar shook the sky. It was the roar of a dragon. Heavens, that's a flood dragon. Many people's pupils suddenly widened as they cried out in disbelief. The giant figure that appeared at the end was actually a blue flood dragon. This flood dragon had a long and slender body that was more than 200 meters long. It had 4 claws under its belly and its aura was terrifying. This was a real flood dragon, a living flood dragon with the blood of a real dragon. Lu Ming also looked in that direction in shock. This was the first time he had seen a living flood dragon. He had seen a dead flood dragon refined into a demon corpse by the people of the Heavenly Corpse sect. The blue water dragon opened its mouth and roared. 2 water tornadoes were sent toward the cold saber spiritual practitioner's saber light. Chapter 664. 664 Fighting a Great Demon Alone. The 2 water tornadoes turned into 2 flood dragons and collided with the cold saber spiritual practitioner's saber radiance. Both of them were destroyed. Roar. The flood dragon let out a long roar, and its jade-like blue dragon body pounced toward the spiritual practitioner Han Dao. The spiritual being Han Dao's momentum was like a rainbow, and the snow-white blade energy around him danced, as if it had frozen the space. An icy blade light slashed towards the flood dragon. The flood dragon's claw collided with the saber radiance, and the boundless energy spread in all directions, tearing the surrounding sea beasts and human warriors into pieces. Let's go up and fight. The cold saber elder flew into the sky, and so did the flood dragon. At their level, a battle below would have too great an impact. It would affect other humans and demonic beasts. Boom, boom, boom. The battle between the ice spiritual being and the flood dragon continued all the way to the sky. However, the battle in the sea became even more intense. The sea beasts had joined the giant deep sea snakes, and their combat strength had increased greatly, completely suppressing the humans. The most fatal thing was that the deep-sea giant snake race had two great demons at the spirit sea realm. They were too powerful, and they were like no man. With a casual twist of their huge bodies, a large number of humans were killed. The two giant deep-sea snakes charged at the humans without restraint. No one could stop them. Screams and wails of pain resounded through the air. Retreat, retreat quickly. We can't stop two spiritual ocean tier great demons at all. Retreat quickly. Someone shouted. He didn't dare to stop them and retreated frantically. As a result, the humans' defensive formation was in complete chaos. The sea beasts kept charging into the area where the giant deep-sea snake was. A large number of martial artists were killed. This time, there were far too many sea beasts. They were far too powerful, far more than they had ever been. We can't keep Golden Sand Island anymore. We can only retreat to the other island. No, we've been operating on Golden Sand Island for hundreds of years. We can't just leave like this. Hold on and wait for help. There were all sorts of cries, but the morale was constantly falling. A sea of soul realm demon? Lu Ming looked in the direction of the giant deep-sea snake. Then, he took a step in the air, turned into a stream of light, and sped in the direction of the giant deep-sea snake. In the other direction, a golden sword light was also heading toward the deep-sea giant snake. The speed of the two rays of light was extremely fast, and in a dozen breaths, they had already neared the two spiritual ocean tier deep-sea giant snakes. True Dragon Strike. Lu Ming approached and thrust his spear forward. A three-colored true dragon roared and danced in the air, pouncing at one of the giant deep-sea snakes. An ant dares to attack me? You're courting death. The deep-sea giant snake snorted and spat out a black water column toward the tricolored true dragon. Boom! With a violent tremor, the water column and the three-colored true dragon disappeared together, but the giant deep-sea snake's forward figure was also blocked. Not far away, a golden sword light also blocked another giant deep-sea snake. It was the King of Hell. Lu Ming and the King of Hell were each facing a huge deep-sea snake. The two deep-sea giant snakes should be at the early stage of the first level of the sixth level, which was equivalent to the early stage of the first level of the spiritual ocean realm. Previously, at the Cloud Sea Alchemy Academy, Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing, Li Xiaoyun, and Jiyu Huashu had worked together to injure the old ancestor of the Cloud Sea Alchemy Academy. The old ancestor was in existence at the peak of the first level of the spiritual ocean tier. During the battle with the forefather of the Cloud Sea Alchemy Academy, Lu Ming's cultivation was only at the peak lever 9 Martial King realm. Now that he had broken through to the peak King realm, his combat strength had increased greatly. Since then, he had not fought with his full strength. Now, this giant deep-sea snake was just the right one. Who is it? He blocked the deep-sea giant snake? It's King Yama and Azura. Are they going to fight with a sea of soul realm beast? It's possible. Their combat strength is extremely terrifying. If they can stop the two giant snakes, we'll have a chance. A martial king fighting the spirit sea? Is that possible? I don't care anymore. We can only take a risk. Let's attack and stop the other sea beasts with all our strength. Stop. The surrounding human warriors roared and organized their forces to block the other sea beasts. Azura, let's have a match and see who can kill this giant snake first. All of a sudden, the voice of the King of Hell rang out. It was very young, but it was filled with sharpness. All right, let's have a match. Lu Ming's fighting spirit was also soaring. Previously, the two of them had some apprehensions and did not fight. But now, they could use another kind of confrontation to determine the winner. However, when these words fell into the ears of the two deep-sea giant snakes, they almost exploded with anger. Ant, you want to kill us? Go to hell. In front of Lu Ming, the huge deep-sea snake roared angrily. It opened its mouth wide and was about to devour Lu Ming. Its tongue was like a sharp sword, shooting toward Lu Ming. Kill. Go. Lu Ming shouted. The three-colored spear's radiance revolvered and transformed into a spear's radiance, stabbing at the giant snake. At the same time, the King of Hell was also engaged in a fierce battle with the giant deep-sea snake. Clang. The tongue of the deep-sea giant snake was like a real sharp sword. When it collided with the long spear, it actually made a sound of gold and iron colliding. Buzz. At the same time, the snake's tail swept across the void, causing a muffled explosion in the air as it whipped toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming took a step forward and soared into the sky, dodging the snake tail's attack. However, the snake tail was like a bone-attached awl. It missed its target and continued to attack Lu Ming from below. 9 dragons trampling the heavens. A dragon's roar resounded, and a terrifying power burst forth, each wave stronger than the last, bombarding the snake's tail. Boom! The snake's tail trembled as if it was bearing an unimaginable force. It continued to shake, and finally, a part of it exploded with a bang, blood splattering everywhere. The spiritual ocean tier giant snake is injured. When the other human warriors nearby saw this, they were immediately excited as if they had seen hope. They roared and charged toward the sea beasts. "Ant, you dare to hurt me? Die, die." The huge deep-sea snake curled its body and the endless sea water turned into sea snakes that pounced at Lu Ming. Exploding star fist. The infinite dragon spear disappeared. Lu Ming cast the exploding star fist. Rays of fist radiance pierced through the void and blasted downward. This time, Lu Ming had integrated 3 intents into the explosive star fist. It was faster and the explosive power was stronger. Boom! Boom! It was as if there were countless meteors falling, constantly colliding with the sea snakes formed by the sea water. With a loud boom, endless energy spread out. The warriors and sea beasts nearby died on the spot once they were hit. "Leave, stay far away." At the place where Lu Ming and the giant snake were fighting, the other warriors and sea beasts had already left. On the other side, the battle between King Yama and the giant deep-sea snake was similar. The sword chi was everywhere, and the other warriors and sea snakes were also far away. "Kill! Die!" Lu Ming shouted. The fist force became more and more violent and intense. In the end, one could barely see Lu Ming punching. One could only see streams of fist radiance pouring down. Cool. It felt too good. Lu Ming's essential core was boiling and his fighting spirit seemed to be burning. This was his true battle, a battle without the slightest hesitation, without the need to suppress his true yuan. He felt that he was able to use the exploding star fist more and more smoothly. Suddenly, the fist ray trembled, and its power seemed to have increased by another level. The 5th level was that Lu Ming had comprehended the exploding star fist to the 5th level during the Great Battle. Chapter 665. 665 Killing the Deep-Sea Giant Snake. The exploding star fist was different from the Dragon God's 3 absolutes. The Dragon God's 3 absolutes were divided into 3 moves. The third move, Extreme Strike, had an extremely strong penetrating power and an unquestionable attacking power. However, the True Dragon Strike and 10,000 Dragon Kill were much weaker. As for the explosive star fist, it was a pure killing move. Each punch was like the explosion of a meteorite. In terms of power, it was even stronger than the True Dragon Strike. The destructive power of the 5th level of the explosive star fist was not weaker than that of the True Dragon Strike. One after another, the fist radiance struck out like the True Dragon Strike. How terrifying was the power! Bang! Bang! Finally, Lu Ming gained the upper hand. He defeated the sea snake that was condensed from seawater. The powerful fist force landed on the body of the deep-sea giant snake. The fist force landed on the body of the giant deep-sea snake, causing it to roar continuously. However, the body of the giant deep-sea snake was covered with scales, and its defense was very terrifying. Moreover, the fist force of the explosive star fist had been offset by the sea snakes condensed by the seawater, so it could only hurt the deep-sea giant snake, but not hurt him. However, this had already infuriated the giant deep-sea snake. It roared angrily and rose into the air, pouncing toward Lu Ming. It opened its mouth wide and black gas billowed toward Lu Ming. Poisonous gas. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat and he retreated rapidly. However, when one of them was touched by the poisonous gas, he immediately felt a burning pain on his skin. The poisonous gas was rapidly corroding his skin. Devour. Lu Ming controlled the devouring power of the 9 dragons' bloodline. Immediately, all the poisonous gas was devoured by the bloodline. Second bloodline, explode. Lu Ming's second blood meridian burst out and his strength increased by another level. He threw more than 100 punches in a row, dispersing the poisonous gas in front of him. The tongue of the deep-sea giant snake was like a sword, wrapped in a layer of black liquid, which increased its power greatly. Whoosh! Whoosh! The snake's tongue flickered wildly, crushing Lu Ming's fist force. After Lu Ming threw more than 100 punches, the infinite dragon spear appeared in his hands. He looked down from above and pulled out the spear. The long spear turned into 1,000 meters long and struck the giant snake's body. The giant snake let out a long hiss and its body was blasted down. 9 dragons trampling the heavens. Lu Ming took 4 steps in the air. The violent power continued to blast towards the giant snake. Its target was the 7-inch position of the giant snake. Bang! At the 7-inch point of the giant snake, it suddenly exploded. Scales flew everywhere, and blood splashed everywhere. However, the giant snake's defense was too strong. Most of the force was blocked by its scales. Although a large piece of flesh was blown off, it was only a superficial wound for the giant snake's huge body. However, this superficial wound was enough for Lu Ming. After Lu Ming used the 9 dragons' heaven treading steps, his body followed suit and fell rapidly. Just as he was about to reach the giant snake, he brazenly launched his strongest attack. An extreme strike. The spear merged with his body and turned into a dazzling spear radiance, which was aimed at the wound of the giant snake. The wound earlier was for this attack. It was a fatal blow. The giant snake seemed to sense a fatal threat. It exerted all its strength and spat out a black poisonous mist at Lu Ming. The poisonous mist had almost turned into a liquid. It was so terrifying that even an ordinary 5th-level spiritual weapon would be corroded and melted. Unfortunately, it had encountered Lu Ming. With the protection of the 9 dragons' bloodline, Lu Ming was not afraid of the poisonous gas at all. The devouring power enveloped Lu Ming's entire body. He dashed forward and the dazzling spear's gleam pierced through the wound on the giant snake's 7-inch head. It then came out from the other side. The 7-inch mark was the vital point of the snake. Lu Ming's move had pierced a huge hole in the vital point of the giant snake. Hiss, hiss. The giant snake's eyes were wide open, and it let out an unwilling roar. It fell into the sea, rolled a few times in the sea, and then stopped, motionless. A deep-sea giant snake at the spiritual ocean tier was killed by Lu Ming. At this moment, Lu Ming's gaze shifted to the other side, where the King of Hell was. A dazzling sword light that was extremely sharp seemed to be able to cut through everything. Poochie. The giant snake's head was almost cut off. More than half of it had been cut off, leaving only a little hanging. The other giant snake was also killed. Hell King's figure appeared, but his black robe was torn in some places, revealing the golden robe inside. He was in a slightly sorry state. The speed at which he killed the giant snake was only a few breaths slower than Lu Ming. At this moment, his gaze was also on Lu Ming. His eyes flickered and he said, "You win this time, but I won't lose next time." "Actually, you didn't lose," Lu Ming said. Hell King's strength had shocked him. The 2nd level of the metal will. The Hell King's will had already reached the 2nd level. As long as he opened the spirit ocean, he would immediately become a Sea of Souls realm warrior. Moreover, Hell King's bloodline martial skill was also extremely powerful. It was even more powerful than Shui Gang's bloodline martial skill. The King of Hell's actual combat strength was definitely not weaker than Lu Ming's. The reason why Lu Ming could kill the giant snake first was that he was not afraid of the poisonous gas attack. A loss is a loss, no matter what the reason is, the King of Hell said calmly. At this moment, the nearby human martialists were first extremely shocked, then extremely excited. 2 deep-sea giant snakes in the spiritual ocean tier had been killed by King Yama and Azura. A martial king had actually killed a warrior in the spiritual ocean tier. This was simply unbelievable. In the past, this had only been heard of in legends. The warriors who had been to the life battle platform had different thoughts. The battle between King Yama and Azura has finally ended. Azura is stronger. Such a thought flashed through many people's minds. There's still some more. Why don't we continue? Lu Ming's gaze turned to the battle in the sky. It was a battle at the level of the spiritual ocean tier. Just what I wanted. King Yama's body revealed a strong fighting spirit. Buzz. Buzz. A beam of sword light and a beam of spear light shot up into the sky at the same time. Lu Ming and the King of Hell were going to participate in the battle between Sea of Soul Realm experts. As long as they killed one or two more Sea of Soul Realm demons, the scales of victory would tilt in the favor of the humans. Lu Ming did not consume the blood essence of the giant deep-sea snake. He had already devoured enough blood essence, and the bloodline of the 9 dragons was still slowly being refined. The blood essence of the spirit sea was too powerful. If he devoured it, Lu Ming would not be able to control it. He would have to find a place to refine it, and he would not be able to continue fighting. In the sky, the formation was extremely intense. The human warriors and the Sea of Soul Realm beasts both had an advantage, and the battle was extremely fierce. For now, no one could determine the winner. A blue-robed burly man was currently engaged in a fierce battle with a tiger shark. This tiger shark had a cultivation of the late first-level spiritual ocean tier, which was even more powerful than the deep-sea giant snake from before. However, the blue-robed man's cultivation was not weak either. His cultivation was also at the late-stage first-level spiritual ocean tier. The blue-robed man and the tiger shark were both injured. Lu Ming's figure flashed and he rushed toward the battlefield. "Haha, little friend, you've come at the right time. Help me kill this beast." The blue-robed burly man burst out laughing excitedly when he saw Lu Ming. He had seen Lu Ming kill the giant deep-sea snake. They were fighting in the sky, but they would also pay attention to the battles in other places and observe the situation at all times. Chapter 666. 666 The Despicable Spiritual Practitioner Han Dao. Damn it! The tiger shark roared angrily at the sight of Lu Ming charging at it. It was a little flustered. "Senior, let's kill this tiger shark together." Lu Ming waved his long spear. The huge spear's radiance was thousands of meters long and it was aimed at the tiger shark. "Haha, let's kill this beast." The blue-robed man's eyes flickered with an ominous glint. He held a combat sword that was wider than his palm and slashed out a shocking sword radiance toward the tiger shark. Lu Ming and the blue-robed burly man joined forces. The tiger shark was immediately at a disadvantage and was completely suppressed. 9 dragons trampling the heavens. Lu Ming took 4 consecutive steps. The violent force was like an ancient divine mountain smashing on the tiger shark's body. The tiger shark's body trembled. Below, the blue-robed man's sword light rushed up and left a wound that was more than 10 meters long on the tiger shark's body. One of its fins was cut off and it was sent flying far away. The tiger shark roared angrily. In its fear, it did not dare to fight anymore and wanted to escape. "You can't escape." Lu Ming used the 9 dragons' heaven treading steps and blocked the tiger shark's path of retreat. He punched more than 100 times in a row. More than 100 explosive fist gleams blocked the tiger shark's path and tore open wounds on the tiger shark's body. Although the wounds were not big, they made the tiger shark bleed. There were even some fist auras that were aimed at the tiger shark's wounds, which made the tiger shark's injuries worse. Sky-piercing sword, kill. The blue-robed man arrived with a terrifying sword radiance that could tear everything apart. It slashed at the tiger shark's wound and directly cut its body into 2. The tiger shark at the spirit sea level was dead. "Haha, little brother, thank you." The blue-robed man grinned, but his eyes still flickered with a fierce light. This was a vicious person. If it was not for Lu Ming's powerful combat strength that had gained his recognition, he would not even care about Lu Ming. If he did not like the look of Lu Ming, he would have killed him. However, Lu Ming's combat strength was already at the same level as him. Naturally, he restrained his ferocious aura. "Let's go and kill the other great demons of the spirit sea," Lu Ming said. "Haha, none of these bastards will leave today." The blue-robed man's face revealed a ferocious expression. Whoosh, whoosh. On the other side, King Yama and another Sea of Soul Realm warrior had also killed a Sea of Soul Realm beast. This way, other than the Flood Dragon, there were only 7 spiritual ocean tier beasts left. On the human side, Other than the spiritual practitioner Han Dao, there were 9 other Sea of Soul Realm experts. Lu Ming and the King of Hell were also at Sea of Soul Realm. Of course, there was also Xian Yanqing. The high-end combat power of the human side had already gained the upper hand. But at this moment, a dragon's roar resounded through the sky and a figure descended rapidly. It was the spiritual practitioner Han Dao. Spiritualist Han Dao spat out a mouthful of blood and fell rapidly. Above him, the flood dragon roared and its huge body slithered down, chasing after him. Whoosh! A blue divine light shot towards the spiritual being Han Dao. He slashed out a blade light and barely blocked the attack. However, the remaining divine light still fell on his body, causing him to spit out a large amount of blood. Bang! The spiritual practitioner Han Dao fell into the sea. The next moment, he rushed out from the other side of the sea. Old man, die! The flood dragon pounced at the spiritual practitioner. Everyone's heart sank. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao was actually no match for him and was completely suppressed. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao was at the peak of the 3rd level of the spiritual ocean realm, but he was still no match for the flood dragon. The flood dragon's combat power was simply too strong. This flood dragon should be at the early stage of the 2nd level of the spiritual ocean tier, but its battle power couldn't be calculated according to normal levels. Flood dragons contained the bloodline of true dragons. Whether it was its physical body or demonic power, it was extremely powerful. It also had some powerful combat skills. Although this flood dragon was only at the early 2nd level of the spiritual ocean tier, the spiritual practitioner Han Dao was no match for it. The flood dragon pounced at the spiritual being Han Dao. He didn't dare to take it head-on, so he turned around and ran away. You can't escape. The flood dragon twisted its huge body and passed through the void, chasing after the spiritual practitioner Han Dao at an extreme speed. A blue godly light, like a godly sword, pierced towards the spiritual practitioner Han Dao. The spiritual being Han Dao was shocked. He quickly moved his body to avoid the blue light. At this moment, he changed his direction and headed toward Lu Ming and the blue-robed burly man. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao rushed toward Lu Ming and the blue-robed burly man. You guys, help me block this flood dragon. Hurry! The spiritual practitioner Han Dao shouted at Lu Ming and the blue-robed man in a commanding tone. Lu Ming frowned. His and the blue-robed man's battle prowess was only at the 1st level of the spiritual ocean realm, which was far from the flood dragons. That would be suicide. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao's goal was simple. He wanted the 2 of them to die so that he would have time to escape. Would Lu Ming be so stupid? He would do his best to participate in this battle, but the premise was that he wouldn't be in any danger. If there was a fatal danger, he and Xian Yanqing would turn and leave. To put it bluntly, he was not related to the people on the Golden Sand Island. What did their life and death have to do with Lu Ming? I believe that many of the people present think so. Now, the spiritual practitioner Han Dao was asking him to die. How could that be possible? Lu Ming turned around and flew far away, avoiding the spiritual practitioner and the flood dragon. The blue-robed man did the same and flew far away. You 2 dare to escape in the face of battle and disregard the safety of the human race. You deserve to die. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao bellowed and looked at Lu Ming and the blue-robed spiritual practitioner with eyes full of killing intent. Lu Ming sneered and could not be bothered with the frost saber spiritual practitioner. Then, spiritual practitioner Han Dao rushed towards Hell King. Without a doubt, Hell King and the other expert also turned around and left. Spiritual practitioner Han Dao roared again and again as he was almost hit by the flood dragon's divine light. His eyes turned cold, and he suddenly rushed toward another battlefield. That battlefield was a battle between a human at the spiritual ocean tier and a great demon. Cold Saber, old freak, what are you doing? That Sea of Soul Realm expert yelled in fear. Since the spiritual practitioner Han Dao had rushed over, it was obvious that he wanted to use him as a shield. Spiritual practitioner Han Dao's face was cold. He didn't say a word and tried his best to rush forward. Retreat, retreat. That spiritual ocean tier cultivator wanted to leave this place. Stay here. That sea of soul realm beast would not let his opponent escape so easily. It launched a crazy attack, trying to hold him back. The spiritual being Han Dao rushed past the human expert. And behind them was the flood dragon. Human ants, go to hell. The flood dragon's huge claws clawed towards the human spiritual ocean tier expert. Damn it, damn it. Eccentric cold saber, you're despicable. The spiritual ocean tier warrior roared and madly exploded, using all of his power, hoping to block the flood dragon's attack and then escape. However, the difference between him and the flood dragon was too great. Under the claw of the flood dragon, all his attacks collapsed, and all his defenses were in vain. Bang! He was grabbed by the flood dragon's claw, and his bones all over his body made cracking sounds. Old ghost cold saber, I curse you to die without a burial place. That person roared, and then his aura rapidly declined. The flood dragon opened its big mouth and swallowed the human expert in one gulp, then continued to chase after the spiritual practitioner Han Dao. Chapter 667. 667 Chaotic Battle, Reinforcements. After that, the spiritual practitioner Han Dao ran further away and rushed to another battlefield. Not good, damn it. When the other spiritual ocean tier elites of the human race saw this scene, they had no desire to continue fighting. They launched a frenzied attack, and then turned to run. However, there were also one or two people who were firmly held back by the great demon opposite them. They couldn't escape at all for a while and could only roar repeatedly. Han Dao, don't come over, someone shouted, but the spiritual practitioner with the cold saber continued to fly toward that person with a dark face. Although these spiritual ocean tier elites couldn't completely stop the flood dragon, as long as they could stop it for a short while, he would be able to escape. Ah, Han Dao, you're despicable. The man cursed. However, the result was the same. When the spiritual practitioner Han Dao rushed over, the flood dragon followed closely behind. The human expert was not the flood dragon's opponent at all and was killed in a few moves. Even his body was swallowed by the flood dragon. Let's go. The other spiritual ocean tier warriors who had escaped didn't dare to stay in the air, and directly flew down to join the battle. Ha ha ha, kill all these humans. Those spiritual ocean tier demons also rushed down to the battlefield while laughing wildly. The battlefield below was in chaos. The addition of spiritual ocean tier warriors caused the battlefield to become a chaotic battle. Miserable shrieks rang out continuously as a large number of martial artists were killed by Sea of Soul Realm beasts. There were also a large number of sea beasts that were killed by Sea of Soul Realm martial artists. Lu Ming also rushed into the battlefield below. Run, run! This area was wreaked havoc by a giant octopus, which was a Sea of Soul Realm beast. The body of the octopus was like a small mountain. Its 8 tentacles danced around, and there were suction cups on each tentacle, which had a powerful attractive force. With a wave of its 8 tentacles, a large number of human warriors were sucked by the suction cups. Then, the suction cups were like huge mouths, revealing their fangs and swallowing the human warriors. The screams rose and fell. Yes, Luo Xin. Lu Ming saw Luo Xin in the crowd. At this moment, she was fleeing frantically with a group of people. Behind them, a huge tentacle was sweeping towards them. Help! The few people who ran to the back were sucked directly by the suction cups of the tentacles, letting out mournful screams. What do we do? What to do? Am I going to die here? Luo Xin's little face was pale, without a trace of blood. She knew that she was in danger today, and she might die here. It was a pity that her dream of expanding the Flame Chamber of Commerce had not been realized. She was going to die here, and she was not willing to die. However, in the face of such a huge gap in strength, what was the use of being unwilling? A huge tentacle was waving at her. She couldn't escape, so she closed her eyes in despair. However, the next moment, she heard a violent boom. Immediately after, she felt her waist tighten as she was hugged by a strong arm. There was also a hot aura that kept surging towards her. She opened her eyes in panic and saw a mask, a Shura mask. It's him. Luo Xin's eyes lit up. She realized that Lu Ming was holding her by the waist and her body was tightly pressed against Lu Ming's strong body. Her heart could not help but beat faster and her face turned hot. However, Lu Ming did not care about them. His eyes were fixed on the huge octopus in front of him. So strong. This octopus demon should be at the second level of the spiritual ocean tier. Lu Ming pondered in his heart and retreated rapidly. Just now, he had exchanged a blow with one of the octopus's tentacles and was no match for it at all. The other party's strength was too strong. Help, help. Lu Ming, save me. A loud cry was heard. Lu Ming looked over and a faint smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. The person who was shouting for help was Chen Zhao. He fled frantically, but behind him, a huge octopus tentacle was waving at him. Lu Ming could not be bothered with him and retreated rapidly. Lu Ming, you left me in the lurch. I curse you. I curse you to die without an intact corpse. Seeing that Lu Ming had no intention of helping him, Chen Zhao started cursing. Luo Xin's gaze was also very calm. Chen Zhao had brought this upon himself. He had offended Lu Ming previously. Why would Lu Ming save him? The tentacle sucked and held Chen Zhao in place. Chen Zhao screamed in fear and struggled desperately, but it was to no avail. The suction cup opened and swallowed Chen Zhao. Buzz. Lu Ming retreated dozens of miles in an instant before he let Luo Xin go. Miss Luo Xin, your cultivation level is not high, so you should stay behind. As soon as Lu Ming finished speaking, he moved and rushed in another direction. There, Xian Yanqing was fighting a huge eel. This eel was also one of the great demons of the spiritual sea. Its entire body was suffused with lightning, and it was extremely powerful. Its cultivation should be at the middle stage of the first-level spiritual sea. However, Xian Yanqing's combat power was also extremely strong. He actually had the upper hand. Lu Ming walked in the air and arrived at the area in no time. A bright spear ray shot toward the eel. It's you. The eel was shocked to see Lu Ming and retreated hurriedly. It had just seen Lu Ming kill a giant deep-sea snake. It felt that it was no match for Xian Yanqing. Now that Lu Ming was added to the mix, it would be a disaster. It was no wonder it ran away. Roar. In the sky, dragon roars could be heard. After killing the 2 Sea of Soul Realm experts, the flood dragon continued to chase after the spirit warrior Han Dao. Old man, I will kill you today. You can't escape. The flood dragon roared, its voice shaking the heavens and earth. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao was running for his life. He was actually flying toward the battlefield below. Run. The martial artists below were scared out of their wits as they scattered and fled. This old man is too despicable. A cold glint flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. He retreated quickly with Xian Yanqing. Whoosh. At this moment, a crimson sword light pierced through the sky and shot toward the flood dragon. The flood dragon grabbed it with its claw and collided with the sword light. With a loud bang, the sword light disappeared, but the flood dragon's body was also blocked for a moment. Seeing this sword light, the spiritual practitioner Han Dao was overjoyed and laughed. Red Dai, you're finally here. You're too slow. Whoosh. Another crimson sword light slashed toward the flood dragon. With the appearance of the sword light, 6 or 7 figures appeared in the distance. The person in the lead was an old man in a red robe. His aura was extremely powerful. Bang! A beam of divine light shot out from one of the flood dragon's horns and blocked the sword light. Buzz. And NBSB, whoosh. The sound of something breaking through the air rang out as 7 figures appeared in the sky above the battlefield. Each of the 7 figures exuded a powerful and terrifying aura. They were actually all powerful existences in the spiritual ocean tier. Han Dao old monster, I went to find the old monster Lu Xian for help, so I was a little late. The red-robed old man grinned. The old monster Lu Xian has also come? Spiritual practitioner Han Dao's eyes flashed and fell on an old man in a green robe beside Hong Kai. He immediately became overjoyed and said, Good, good, the 3 of us will join forces and kill this flood dragon. Chapter 668. 668 Victory, Shocking Change. Of course, do it. The red-haired old monster shouted in a low voice. Beside him, 5 Sea of Soul Realm experts flew toward the battlefield below, while he and the green mysterious old monster flew toward the flood dragon. Together with the spiritual practitioner Han Dao, they surrounded the flood dragon. The cultivation of the red-haired old monster and the green-faced old monster was the same as the cold saber spirit warrior. They were both at the peak 3rd level of the spiritual ocean realm. A flood dragon's entire body is full of treasures. If we kill it, we'll split it equally among the 3 of us. The red-haired old monster's eyes were filled with greed. All right, let's do it. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao shouted. Boom, boom, boom. 3 terrifying auras shot up into the sky. At the same time, 2 sword lights and a green pearl attacked the flood dragon. The flood dragon roared and charged forward. Haha, our reinforcements are here. Kill these bastards. Many human warriors shouted. This time, 7 spiritual ocean tier elites from the human race came all at once. 2 were against the flood dragon, and the other 5 joined the battle, instantly turning the situation around. The human race had a complete advantage in terms of high-end battle power. Not only were all the Sea of Souls realm beasts blocked, but there were also extra Sea of Souls realm experts on the human side who were constantly hunting those sea beasts. On the ocean, there were countless corpses of humans and sea beasts. So much blood essence. This time, Lu Ming had devoured a lot of blood essence. Most of them were peak-tier king's blood essence. After the battle began, Lu Ming had devoured more than 50 peak-tier king's blood essence. He felt that his 9-dragon bloodline was almost full. He really wanted to find a place to refine it. But now, he could only slowly refine it while fighting. Up until now, the human race had suffered countless losses, but they had finally gained the upper hand. With the addition of spiritual ocean tier elites, they were like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, and a large number of sea beasts were killed. Retreat, retreat. Finally, the sea beasts were scared. One of the great demons of the spirit sea shouted and gathered the sea beasts to retreat into the sea. In terms of high-end combat power, the humans had already gained the upper hand. If the battle continued, the sea beasts would be completely annihilated sooner or later. Lord Flood Dragon, this is all we can help you with. A giant octopus spoke. It then gathered the sea beasts and retreated into the ocean. Hualala. The ocean waves surged and turned into a 1,000-meter-tall wave. Countless sea beasts hid in the waves and disappeared. Once a sea beast entered the sea and focused on escaping, it would be difficult for martial artists to pursue it. Roar. In the sky, the flood dragon roared repeatedly. It was besieged by 3 experts at the peak of the 3rd level of the spiritual ocean tier and was completely at a disadvantage. In just a short while, a few wounds appeared on the flood dragon's body. Its scales were torn apart and blood flowed out. Kill this flood dragon, some martial artists shouted. However, the flood dragon was clearly no match for him, but it refused to retreat. The blue divine light kept bursting out from the flood dragon's body, attacking the 3 spiritual practitioner Han Dao. At the same time, the flood dragon's body continued to shrink. In a few breaths, a middle-aged man in blue armor appeared in the air. He held a halberd in his hand. With a wave of the halberd, the spirit warrior Han Dao was forced back. In human form, this burly man in battle armor was a flood dragon. Whoosh! The flood dragon forced back the spiritual practitioner Han Dao and turned into a rainbow light, shooting toward the depths of the Golden Sand Island. Chase! The spiritual practitioner Han Dao, the red monster and the green monster all chased after the flood dragon and disappeared into the sky. At this time, countless sea beasts had retreated into the ocean and escaped, leaving countless corpses on the surface of the sea. Ah, that tiger shark is mine. That's mine. Countless warriors were flying above the ocean, putting the dead bodies of the sea beasts into their storage rings. Many parts of these sea beasts' bodies were precious materials that could be used to refine weapons, elixirs, and so on. They were very valuable, so of course, these warriors were tempted. Get lost. This is mine. Some people roared, and a great battle even broke out. Lu Ming moved and appeared in front of a huge deep-sea giant snake. Get lost. One of the peak-tier kings did not even look and slashed at Lu Ming. However, When he saw Lu Ming's appearance, he was so scared that he almost peed his pants. He hurriedly retracted his knife. "Shura!" he screamed. "You want to die?" Lu Ming said coldly. No, it's a misunderstanding. This deep-sea giant snake is yours." The peak-tier king laughed as he hurriedly turned around and left. "Brat, get lost. The corpse of a Sea of Soul realm beast, you can take it if it's not dead." A man in his 30s with a tall nose flew over at high speed. This was a powerful warrior of the spiritual ocean tier, a group of powerful warriors who had arrived later to help. He did not see Lu Ming kill the great demon of the spiritual ocean, and only thought that Lu Ming was an ordinary peak-tier king. Before he even arrived, his powerful aura was already pressing down on Lu Ming. Lu Ming frowned and appeared on the body of the giant deep-sea snake. He placed his palm on the snake's wound and sucked, swallowing the 9 drops of blood essence. Then, his figure flashed and he left the place. His target was the blood essence of the giant deep-sea snake. As for the corpse of the giant deep-sea snake, although it was precious, he didn't care much about it. And now, he needed to refine the blood essence and didn't want to get into a conflict with others. Seeing that Lu Ming did not touch the giant deep-sea snake, the tall-nosed man cast a cold glance at Lu Ming, then waved his hand and kept the huge body of the giant deep-sea snake into his storage ring. Boom! Boom! The blood essence of a Sea of Soul realm beast was too terrifying. Once it was swallowed into the 9-dragon bloodline, it was like a volcano erupting, constantly impacting the 9-dragon bloodline and making rumbling sounds. He had wanted to devour more blood essence, but it seemed that he could not do it. "Little Qing, let's go. I need you to protect me," Lu Ming shouted. He had to find a place to refine the blood essence. Xian Yanqing nodded and flew towards the city with Lu Ming. Boom! However, at this moment, an earth-shaking sound suddenly came from the depths of the Golden Sand Island. Then, everyone saw a beam of 7-colored divine light shooting into the sky. Although it was far away, they could still feel the magnificence of the divine light. Boom! 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 The entire Golden Sand Island started to shake. Boom! The 7-colored divine light was even more dazzling. It broke through the clouds and rushed into the sky. Then what's going on? What is this 7-colored light pillar? Could it be related to the flood dragon? Possible. The beast tide this time is very abnormal. I suspect that it's organized by that flood dragon. There must be a purpose. The martial artists present looked at the rainbow divine light in a daze, and some of them whispered among themselves. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing were also shocked as they stood in the void to watch. The 7-colored divine light became more and more dazzling, and its light completely outshined the sun in the sky. All of a sudden, after a violent boom, the 7-colored divine light disappeared. Instead, an island appeared. A floating island. Chapter 669. 669 9th Level King, Bloodline Martial Skill. A floating island was emitting a brilliant 7-colored light. It was bright and resplendent as it floated in the air. Roar! A dragon's roar resounded, and then it went silent. It was obvious that the dragon's roar had come from the flood dragon. 7-colored island? Is that the legendary 7-colored island? An old man with white hair suddenly exclaimed. What? The 7-colored island? You mean the 7-colored Daoist's 7-colored island? Some people widened their eyes in disbelief. That's right, this looks like the 7-colored Daoist's 7-colored island. Heavens, it can't be true, right? The 7-colored Daoist is a legendary 7th-grade Daoist. He's an inscription master, and a peerless expert of the spirit embryo realm at that. Legend has it that the 7-colored Daoist died 800 years ago, and his 7-colored island disappeared without a trace. If this really is the 7-colored Daoist's 7-colored island, how many treasures are there? The scene was in an uproar. Countless people's eyes were burning with passion. Only when one's cultivation reached the spirit embryo realm could one be called a perfected being. Normally, spiritual ocean tier warriors were called spiritualists, just like the frost saber spiritualist, but less people used them. As for those at the spirit embryo realm, they were revered as perfected beings. Spiritual god realm was known as supreme realm. The seven-colored Daoist was a spirit embryo realm expert, but this was not his most famous achievement. He was most famous for being a 7th-grade true inscription alchemist. This identity was terrifying. True Ming refinement masters were extremely rare. Be it their identity or status, they were not to be underestimated. A 7th-grade true inscription alchemist was comparable to a peerless master in the spiritual god realm. Back then, the seven-colored Daoist practically dominated the chaotic astral ocean. Even some super-large domains knew of his name. The seven-colored Daoist's most famous treasure was the seven-colored island. It was an island, a plane, and a treasure that could escape into the void and wander around. When the seven-colored Daoist fell, everyone thought that the seven-colored island would disappear into the void and never appear again. And now, it had appeared. Buzz. And NBSB, whoosh. The Sea of Souls realm warriors were the first to react. They turned into rainbow lights and flew toward the seven-colored island. Seven-colored island, it's definitely a seven-colored island. Let's go. Countless warriors turned into beams of light and flew toward the rainbow island. The figures on the shore disappeared. It seems like a treasure has appeared. Lu Ming muttered. He had never heard of the seven-colored Daoist's name before. However, he knew that he was extraordinary from how excited the others were. However, refining the blood essence was more important now. As for the treasures, he could only wait. Let's return to the city first. Lu Ming and Xie Nianqing flew back to the city. They randomly found a room and rushed in. Xie Nianqing stood outside the room to protect Lu Ming. With a single thought, he appeared in the supreme shrine. He sat cross-legged and began to refine the blood essence with all his might. The blood essence of more than 50 peak-tier kings, as well as the blood essence of a Sea of Soul realm giant snake. The power of this blood essence was too strong. Lu Ming put all his effort into refining it. The power of everyone's blood essence surged towards the second bloodline. The second blood meridian appeared above Lu Ming's head. It had 8 Silivera meridian cycles. 7 of them were extremely bright, while the 8th one was dimmer. On the stone tablet, clouds and mist lingered. However, at the very front, the clouds and mist were already very faint. 2 words could be clearly seen. One was suppress, and the other was tablet. There was another word in the middle, but it was blocked and could not be seen clearly. As Lu Ming continued to refine his blood essence, the power of the blood essence surged into his second blood meridian. The 8th meridian cycle of the second blood meridian also continued to shine brightly. 2 hours later, his 8th chakra was as brilliant as the other chakras. Lu Ming continued to refine the blood essence. In the sky 10,000 miles away from the city, a brilliant ball was floating in the air. This ball had a diameter of about 100 miles. This was the seven-colored island. It was completely wrapped in a layer of light, and the situation inside could not be seen clearly. More than 100,000 martial artists were surrounding the round ball. The seven-colored island is protected by the inscription battle. Only peak-tier kings can break through this barrier. We can't get in at all. Fuck, the treasure mountain is right in front of us, but we can only stare at it. How unlucky. There's nothing we can do. We're too weak. Peak-tier kings and Sea of Soul realm experts have all rushed in. Someone's coming again. A ray of light cut through the void and appeared on the edge of the seven-colored island. It was a burly man in a red robe. If Lu Ming was here, he would have recognized the red-robed man as the patriarch of the Cloud Sea Alchemy Institution. He didn't appear in the battle just now, but he did now. Haha, that battle actually led to the seven-colored island. I can't miss such an opportunity, the Sea Cloud Alchemy Division's patriarch chuckled. With a wave of his palm, he pierced through the light curtain. His body moved and he rushed in. Then, the light curtain closed. Who's that person? He didn't appear during the battle just now, but now that he's seen a treasure, he's here. How shameless. Someone coldly snorted. I don't know. I don't recognize him. He's probably a new almighty. Someone shook his head. Time flew by and soon, more than 10 hours had passed. Lu Ming had been refining the blood essence and more than half of the blood essence had been devoured. On his second bloodline, 8 Silivara Chakra were extremely dazzling. In the blink of an eye, another 2 hours had passed. Buzz! All of a sudden, a Silivara meridian cycle emerged above the 8 meridian cycles. The 9th chakra. The 9th level of the king level. Lu Ming's second bloodline had been promoted to the 9th level of the king level, becoming the highest level of the king level bloodline. The next step would be the divine bloodline. However, it would be too difficult to advance to the divine bloodline at the 9th level of the king tier. Lu Ming was not confident. Buzz! When the second bloodline advanced to the 9th level of the king class, the stone tablet began to shake slightly. The mist surrounding the stone tablet slowly became lighter, and the word in the middle became clearer and clearer. Finally, he saw it clearly. Prison. The word in the middle was prison. The prison guarding steely. Just as Lu Ming could see the 3 words clearly, they suddenly emitted a dazzling brilliance. Lu Ming seemed to have arrived at an endless land. The land was desolate, without the sun, moon, stars, flowers, trees, or any living creature. It was deathly silent. On the deathly silent land, a stone tablet stood tall. It was infinitely tall, reaching the heavens and the earth. Lu Ming saw 3 big words on the stone tablet. The prison guarding steely. Boom! Lu Ming suddenly felt an explosion in his mind. A message rushed into his mind. At this moment, the scene changed. Lu Ming was still in the Supreme Shrine, and the 3 words prison suppressing steely on the stone tablet had calmed down and no longer emitted light. It was as if nothing had happened. However, Lu Ming discovered that there was indeed a new piece of information in his mind. The prison suppressing heaven art. A martial technique appeared in his mind, a martial technique related to the prison suppressing steely. Is this a bloodline martial technique? Lu Ming's eyes flickered and he revealed a look of joy. Chapter 670. 670 Entering the Rainbow Island. He had always envied others for being able to comprehend their own bloodline martial skills. He did not expect that a martial skill would appear in his mind as soon as the prison-suppressing steely bloodline advanced to the 9th level of the king stage. However, now was not the time to observe and comprehend the martial technique. There was still a part of blood essence in the 9-dragon bloodline that had not been refined. The 9th chakra of the prison-suppressing steely bloodline had appeared. Lu Ming was not in a hurry to continue upgrading the prison-suppressing steely bloodline. Instead, he gave the remaining blood essence energy to the 9 dragons bloodline. All in all, he had spent a day refining everyone's blood essence. However, the 9 dragon bloodline had not been raised to the 9th level of the king tier. The energy was still not enough. Lu Ming heaved a sigh of relief. He got up and left the Supreme Shrine, walking out of his room. Lu Ming, you're too slow. It's already been a day, and I can feel a strong aura of spirit herbs on the Rainbow Island. There must be a large number of spirit herbs on the island. If we don't go now, they'll all be picked by others. The moment Lu Ming left the room, Dandan, who was lying on Xian Yanqing's shoulder, screamed. A large amount of spiritual medicine? Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He had too many uses for the spiritual medicine and would not let it go. There's definitely no mistake. There are definitely a lot of spirit herbs. Dandan jumped onto Lu Ming's shoulder, her eyes glowing. Let's go, we'll go over now. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing rose into the air and flew toward the Rainbow Island. The 10,000-mile distance was quickly covered. Now, there were a lot fewer people around the 7-colored island. Many martial artists left when they saw that they couldn't enter, but there were still a few who remained, hoping for a miracle. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing's arrival did not attract much attention. Now, the two of them had returned to their original appearances and removed their masks. No one knew that they were the famous Azura and Yaksha. The island with a diameter of more than 100 miles was floating in the air, covered by a light shield. This brother, why aren't you guys going in? Lu Ming pulled a young man and asked curiously. Did you just come from outside? This place is protected by an inscription formation, and only those with the battle power of a peak-tier king would be able to break through this barrier and enter. The young man cast a casual glance at Lu Ming and said casually. He was not too bothered. Lu Ming looked 5 to 6 years younger than him. He did not think that Lu Ming would be able to barge in. Oh, so those peak tier king tiers and above have all barged in? However, the Rainbow Island only had a diameter of about 100 miles. With so many experts entering, they should have already dug 3 feet deep into the Rainbow Island. It's been a day, why hasn't he come out yet? Lu Ming was a little curious. This was also something that he found strange. I don't know. If you have the ability, go in and see for yourself. The young man looked at Lu Ming with a mocking expression. However, Lu Ming nodded and said, yes, we can only go in and take a look. And NBSB. Then, Lu Ming casually punched out and the light screen was penetrated. Lu Ming took a step and walked in. Xian Yanqing reached out his hand and pressed down. The light screen was also penetrated, and Xian Yanqing's figure disappeared. This. The young man was dumbfounded and stood there in a daze. The world spun and Lu Ming realized that he was in the air and was falling rapidly. He quickly circulated his vital essence to stay suspended in the air. Xian Yanqing appeared not far from him. Lu Ming stood in midair, looking into the distance in a daze. The world was vast with mountains and dangerous peaks. Lu Ming could see at least a few 100 miles away. There was no end to the world. It was more than 100 miles, it was boundless. Lu Ming, the 7-colored island looks like it's only 100 miles from the outside, but there's something else inside. I guess it's a small plain with a huge area, Xian Yanqing said. Lu Ming nodded. This Rainbow Island was really amazing. Moreover, the mountains here were also very strange. They were divided into different colors and had distinct layers. Some of the mountains had red plants, some had golden plants, some were blue, and some were purple. There were a total of 7 colors. No wonder it was called the Rainbow Island. Moreover, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth here was extremely rich. There's spirit herbs. I can smell spirit herbs. Dandan raised her 2 short legs and ran forward wildly. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing followed. Dandan stopped on a mountain peak, only to see that the mountain peak was full of potholes, and there was still a residual medicinal fragrance. Obviously, there were indeed spiritual herbs, but they had been dug out. They came to a few nearby mountain peaks, and there were traces of excavation everywhere. The 7-colored Daoist used to be a rank 7 true inscription master. He was probably an expert in alchemy, so it was normal for him to plant a lot of spirit herbs. Look, didn't I say we were late? All the spiritual herbs have been dug up. Dandan said unhappily. Let's go, stop mumbling. This island is very large, and no one has gone out yet. This means that this island has not been completely mined. If we rush over now, we'll still be in a hurry. Lu Ming grabbed Dandan and placed her on his shoulder. He then transformed into a stream of light and sped forward. They did not see anyone along the way, so Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing did not stop and continued flying. Before long, the two of them had flown a distance of 100,000 miles. It was unknown how many mountains and rivers they had flown over. Towards the end, the two of them saw the figure of a person, but it was already a corpse. It was obvious that a great battle had broken out as they were fighting over the spirit herbs. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of a battle came from ahead. Then, he saw a few streams of light flying toward a mountain range. Let's go. We've found a level 6 spiritual herb in the valley ahead. Let's join hands and snatch the spiritual medicine. We'll split it evenly. The 3 figures disappeared in the blink of an eye. In the mountain range ahead, the rumbles were getting more and more intense. Level 6 spiritual medicine. Kill. Lu Ming. Charge. When she heard about level 6 spirit herbs, Dandan's eyes lit up and her little claws kept waving. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Level 6 spiritual herbs were rare. Together with Xian Yanqing, they flew forward. In front of him, there was a huge canyon in the mountains. Inside, there were flashes of light and violent rumbles, as well as the angry roars of people. The two of them rushed in without hesitation. There were more than a dozen people fighting, and they were all peak tier king tiers. On a cliff in the valley, there were 3 purple spirit herbs. Ziying grass was a level 6 spiritual herb. After consuming it, It could increase one's true essence and increase one's cultivation. More than a dozen peak-tier kings were engaged in a chaotic battle. Lu Ming took a step forward and walked toward the ziying grass. "Brat, get lost. The ziying grass is mine." One of the burly men's eyes flickered with a menacing glint and he clawed at Lu Ming. "You're the one who should get lost." Lu Ming turned his hand around and threw a punch. An explosive fist radiance shot out. The strong man's claw made a cracking sound and his bones broke. He screamed in pain and his body flew out like a cannonball. He crashed heavily into the stone wall at the side of the canyon, creating a huge pit. The brawny man was stuck in the deep pit. He was already exhaling more than he was inhaling. The dozen peak-tier kings who were fighting instantly stopped and looked at Lu Ming in shock. Chapter 671. 671 Berating a Spiritual Ocean Tier Warrior. They were well aware of the brawny man's strength. In the battle earlier, the brawny man was the strongest among them. However, a casual punch from Lu Ming was enough to beat the brawny man to a pulp. Lu Ming's combat strength was too terrifying. "Shura. He's a Shura. I've seen that fist technique before." Suddenly, an old man exclaimed and looked at Lu Ming in fear. "What? Shura, it's him? It should be him. He's so young and has such combat power. It's very likely that he's a Shura. He's just taking off his mask." The other peak-tier kings exclaimed in shock and looked at Lu Ming in shock. If it was really an Ashura, they knew that they could forget about this spirit herb. The Shura had single-handedly killed a deep-sea giant snake in the battle with the sea beasts. His combat strength was simply terrifying to the extreme. Killing them would not take much effort. "I'm taking this ziying grass." Lu Ming swept his gaze across these people and said calmly, "It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Since little brother has taken a fancy to it, you can just take it," the old man said with a smile. Lu Ming's expression was calm as he strode toward the ziying grass. Whoosh! Just as Lu Ming was about to approach the ziying grass, a blade of light cut through the void and slashed at Lu Ming. Lu Ming furrowed his brows and retreated quickly, avoiding the saber gleam. A brawny man in his 30s walked over step by step with his hands behind his back. An aura as deep as the ocean emanated from his body. Spiritual Ocean Tier. This was a Spiritual Ocean Tier martial artist. "It's him." Lu Ming's heart stirred. Lu Ming recognized the brawny man. He was one of the experts who had rushed over to help. He was also the one who had taken away the corpse of the deep-sea giant snake that Lu Ming had killed. "Do you think a mere martial king like you can lay your hands on a level 6 spiritual herb? What a whimsical idea." The brawny man stood high in the sky with his hands behind his back, looking down at Lu Ming and the rest with an arrogant look. The dozen peak-tier kings had ugly expressions. "Since Senior has taken a liking to it, we naturally don't dare to compete with Senior. We'll take our leave now." The old man cupped his hands towards Zhong Tai respectfully before turning around and leaving. Whoosh! The brawny man waved his hand, and a saber light slashed toward the old man. The old man's expression changed drastically and he hurriedly dodged to the side, barely avoiding the saber ray. Of course, this was also because the burly man had held back. Otherwise, with the old man's cultivation, he would definitely not be able to avoid it. "Senior, what do you mean by this?" The old man's face was extremely ugly. Although he looked older than the brawny man, in the world of martial Dao, the strong were respected. Cultivation was the only thing that mattered, not age. Furthermore, the other party was an almighty being of the spirit sea. Who knew how old he was on the surface? "What do you mean? Hand over your storage rings. I've already said that level 6 spiritual herbs are not for you to take." The burly man said indifferently. "What? You want us to hand over our storage rings?" The expressions of the peak-tier kings changed dramatically. They were not fools. If they handed over their storage rings, how could they take them back? "What's wrong? You don't want to pay? If you don't hand it over, then you can stay here forever." The brawny man's face darkened, and a hint of killing intent flashed in his eyes. The expressions of the peak-tier kings changed drastically. All of their belongings were in their storage rings. If they handed them over, how could they cultivate in the future? A few people could not help but look at Lu Ming. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing's expressions were calm from the beginning to the end. What? The burly man shifted his gaze to Lu Ming, then to Xian Yanqing. A sinister fire flashed in his eyes. Kid, you're pretty calm. Let's start with you. Hurry up and hand over your storage ring, the burly man shouted. Get lost. Lu Ming only replied with one word. The strong man was stunned. He stared at Lu Ming with wide eyes. He suspected that he had heard wrongly. Lu Ming actually told him to get lost. A martial king and was telling him to get lost. He thought he was hallucinating. Kid, what did you say? What did you just say? The burly man could not help but ask twice. I'll give you 3 breaths of time to get lost. If you don't want to leave, then stay here forever, Lu Ming said indifferently. Ha ha ha, little brat, you're telling me to get lost. Are you crazy? The burly man laughed madly as if he had never encountered such a funny thing in his life. 3. Lu Ming started to count coldly. You're looking for death, you know? However, I'll make you wish you were dead. The brawny man emitted a strong killing intent. 2. Lu Ming continued. The brawny man's face darkened completely. He realized that Lu Ming did not seem to be joking at all. He was serious. However, what right did a young kid in his 20s, a warrior at the peak of the martial king realm, have to ask him, a Sea of Soul realm expert, to get lost? What was his confidence? The dozen peak-tier kings were also dumbfounded. Even though they had guessed that Lu Ming might be an Azura, they felt as if they were dreaming when they saw a peak-tier king threatening a Sea of Soul realm expert. 1. Lu Ming counted to 1. In a flash, Xian Yanqing appeared behind the brawny man, one in front and one behind Lu Ming, blocking his way out. You 2 little brats, I'd like to see what kind of ability you have to be so arrogant in front of me. Today, I'll make you face a life and death dilemma. The burly man revealed a ferocious expression and his killing intent became even stronger. Nonsense. Lu Ming's eyes flashed and he suddenly threw a punch. This punch almost pierced through the space and let out a deafening roar. The brawny man's expression changed. He realized that this punch could pose a threat to him. A saber appeared in his hand. Just as he was about to swing the saber to disperse Lu Ming's fist radiance, his body suddenly sank as if a 10,000-foot mountain was pressing on him. He almost fell to the ground. Behind them, Xian Yanqing used the Sky Demon force field. Damn it! The brawny man found that his body was as heavy as a mountain. Not only did his movements slow down, but even the circulation of his true essence in his body slowed down. It was as if every muscle on his body was pressed down by a mountain. Exploding star fist. Boom. Boom. At this moment, Lu Ming threw hundreds of punches. Hundreds of terrifying fist gleams were aimed at the burly man. That aura was too terrifying. Destruction cut. Xian Yanqing muttered as the power of destruction suddenly erupted. The burly man's body trembled violently. The destructive cutting force almost cut him into 2. Lu Ming's exploding star fist had already arrived. No, no, spare my life. At this moment, the brawny man was afraid. He was truly afraid. With his cultivation at the mid-stage of the first level of the spiritual ocean realm, it was almost impossible for him to resist the joint attack of Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. He could feel death approaching. However, before he could finish his sentence, hundreds of fist radiance drowned him. Again, Lu Ming threw over 100 punches, followed by another 100 punches. Another 100 fist gleams headed for the burly man. That area was completely submerged by the intense light, and only the sound of explosions could be heard. Chapter 672. 672 Chapter 672 Instant Kill. The other peak-tier kings all stared at the area with wide eyes. Very quickly, the light completely dissipated. There was nothing there. No, to be more precise, there was only a cloud of blood floating in the air, and a storage ring. Hiss hiss hiss. The dozen peak-tier kings all took in cold breaths. He was dead. A first-level spiritual ocean tier mighty figure had died just like that. Under the combined efforts of Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing, not even his bones were left behind. His body had been crushed into pieces. They already knew that the Shura and the Yaksha were powerful, but seeing this, the hearts of the peak-tier kings were still in turmoil. Too strong. A peak-tier king tier was actually this strong? When the two of them joined hands, they simply complemented each other. It was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Lu Ming stretched out his hand and sucked the burly man's storage ring into his hand. However, he still felt a little depressed. The attack just now was too ferocious. The brawny man's blood essence was directly annihilated, leaving nothing behind. Lu Ming felt that it was a pity. This was the blood essence of a Sea of Soul Realm expert. After Lu Ming refined it, he estimated that his 9-dragon bloodline could be raised to the 9th level of the king level. Lu Ming secretly warned himself that he would try not to attack so fiercely in the future. You guys can leave. Then, Lu Ming swept his gaze across the dozen peak-tier kings. All right, thank you, young master, thank you, young lady. The dozen peak-tier king tiers hurriedly nodded and bowed to express their gratitude before leaving. If not for Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing, they would have lost all their assets. After the dozen peak-tier kings left, Lu Ming dug out the 3 Ziying grass. Little Qing, how about we split the things we got from the Rainbow Island equally? Lu Ming took the burly man's storage ring and shook it. I'm fine with anything, Xian Yanqing said. Anything is fine. Why are you so easy to talk to now? You've already made clear plans with me in the past, could it be? Don't tell me. Lu Ming pretended to be surprised. He touched his chin and looked at Xian Yanqing carefully. What are you looking at? Pervert, what are you thinking? Xian Yanqing's face turned red and he glared at Lu Ming. He, I understand. We're a family, so there's no need to distinguish between us. Lu Ming chuckled. Who's the same family as you? You wish. No, that guy's storage ring is mine. Xian Yanqing's eyes widened as he sucked in his vital essence, sucking the storage ring from Lu Ming's hand. No way, I also contributed, I also have a share. Lu Ming wailed. Who told you to offend me? You deserve it. Xian Yanqing glared at Lu Ming again. He turned around, but there was a smile in his eyes. Lu Ming was speechless. This was the storage ring of a spiritual ocean realm expert. It was gone just like that. Lu Ming's heart ached to death. He quickly put away the 3 herbs, or they would fall into Xian Yanqing's poisonous hands again. Hey, you guys broke up, but what about me? What about me? Don't you guys forget about me, Dandan shouted. Go to the side and cool off. Lu Ming cast a glance at Dandan unhappily. Kid, what's with your attitude? I'm not done with you. Give me the spirit herbs, or I'll bite you. As Dandan bared her teeth, the 2 men and the turtle left the canyon and continued to head deeper into the Rainbow Island. From here on out, he would encounter other martial artists from time to time, and the spiritual herbs slowly increased. The 7-colored Daoist had turned the 7-colored island into an herb farm, planting spirit herbs everywhere. The 7-colored Daoist had died 800 years ago, and the 7-colored island had also disappeared for 800 years. Naturally, there were many spirit herbs here. Spirit herbs could be seen on every mountain. They were basically level 4, level 5, and even level 6. Level 6 spirit herbs were extremely useful even for Sea of Soul Realm experts. How precious were they? Naturally, it triggered a series of fights and wars. However, with Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing's cultivation, they were unstoppable. No one was their match. Along the way, there were also some who wanted to rob them. In the end, their blood essence fell into the mouth of the 9 dragon bloodlines. A day later, they had a great harvest. They each got more than 300 pieces of level 5 spiritual herbs and more than a dozen pieces of level 6 spiritual herbs. Even Dandan's harvest was not small, and she put all of it into her mouth. Quickly run. All of a sudden, a few peak-tier kings flew out of a mountain peak in horror. Whoosh, whoosh. Following that, Lu Ming saw the mountain peak glow. Streams of sword chi burst out and killed several peak-tier kings in the air. Great inscription formation. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. On the mountain peak, Lu Ming saw a large inscription formation operating. Little brat, I can sense that there are inscription formations everywhere ahead. It's quite dangerous. Dandan looked ahead and whispered. Lu Ming stared ahead. The mental fire in his sea of consciousness was jumping. He had the same feeling. He felt that there were inscription arrays everywhere in front of him and there was killing intent everywhere. I think we're almost at the core. Otherwise, why would they set up such a large inscription formation? Xian Yanqing said. All right. Lu Ming nodded and said, let's be careful when we go down. Then, the two of them slowed down a lot and focused on sensing carefully. Lu Ming's mental energy fire was dancing. He could sense the inscription formation very accurately and would not step into a place with an inscription formation rashly. Buzz. In a valley, a blazing fire suddenly burst out. A few martial artists screamed in pain and turned into ashes. The two of them traveled for thousands of miles and saw that 5 groups of people had died under the inscription formation. Danger was accompanied by opportunities. There were more spiritual herbs here than anywhere else, especially spiritual herbs of the 6th level. The proportion was very high. What? Suddenly, Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing stopped and looked ahead. In front of them, a large mountain range had collapsed, and the ground was full of potholes. It was obvious that a great battle had taken place here, and the area within 100 miles was in a state of chaos. To be able to create such a mark, their combat strength must be terrifying. Could it be that the Flood Dragon and a few experts at the 3rd level of the spiritual ocean tier did it? Lu Ming pondered. The two of them patrolled the sky above the land. There's a corpse. No, it's half a corpse. Xian Yanqing looked down. The two of them descended and saw half of the corpse. Only the lower half was left. The upper half was missing. It's that green mystic old freak. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. It seems like this place is really the battlefield between the Flood Dragon and the old monsters, Xian Yanqing said in a low voice. The green profound old monster, the cold saber spiritual practitioner, and the red profound old monster were chasing after the Flood Dragon. They must have caught up with it and had a big fight. However, it seemed that the green profound old monster had died in the battle, leaving only half of his corpse. They might have gone to the front. The Flood Dragon led the army of sea beasts to attack the Golden Sand Island, most likely for this Rainbow Island. He charged over without a care for his own safety. Lu Ming frowned and guessed. Lu Ming, look. There seems to be a palace up ahead. Xian Yanqing suddenly pointed to the front. Lu Ming looked over as well. He saw a palace on a tall mountain peak. However, it was too far away and it was barely visible. Chapter 673. 673 The Unreliable Little Turtle. Could that be the place where the 7-colored Daoist is cultivating in seclusion? Lu Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. The 7-colored Daoist was a spirit embryo realm expert and a 7th rank true inscription refiner. How terrifying was that? How many treasures would he have in his closed-door cultivation? Lu Ming's heart palpitated. Let's go, brat. I've already felt the treasure calling. Let's go. Dandan cried out, her eyes wide open and sparkling with a crystal-like luster. Let's go. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing did not stop and continued to move forward. After a few hundred miles, their speed gradually slowed down. Although the palace was clearer from here, the inscription arrays here were getting more and more dense. If he was not careful, he would step into the inscription array. Along the way, they saw many more corpses. It was even more dangerous if they continued forward, as there were formations everywhere. It's fine. With me here, what's a mere 7th rank inscription master's inscription formation to me? Just you guys wait. Dandan leaped down from Lu Ming's shoulder, spread out her short legs and sprinted wildly in the air. She looked left and right, sometimes deep in thought, sometimes looking at the mountains and rivers. After a while, Dandan flew back to Lu Ming's shoulder and said, "Fly 3 miles to the right and land on that mound. After that, fly 5 miles forward and continue." Dandan began to give pointers. "Hey, Dandan, Is it reliable? This is a human life. Lu Ming looked at Dandan with some worry. Nonsense, who am I? The head of the top 10 war beasts, who had read through thousands of great arrays. What was this great array? If this lord wasn't injured, this child's play would be broken with a wave of my hand, Dandan said with a smug face. Lu Ming was speechless. He did not really believe Dandan. This guy often dropped the ball at critical moments. However, he was only a third-rank alchemist, and the inscriptions he had mastered were only at the third rank. His study of the inscription formation was not mature enough. He could not see through the formation that was set up by a 7th-rank alchemist master. I can only trust this guy now. Lu Ming gritted his teeth and followed Xian Yanqing's instructions. They flew 3 miles to the right and then 5 miles forward. Buzz. More than 10 minutes later, an ordinary-looking small mountain peak suddenly flashed with runes. A few dazzling sword gleams condensed and slashed toward Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. Nest, you've misjudged. Run. Dandan shouted and ran away, faster than anyone else. CK me. Lu Ming was cursing in his heart. He swept his spear across and retreated quickly. Xian Yanqing also cast the Sky Demon Force Field to block the sword radiance. Xian Yanqing's Sky Demon Force Field was split in half almost instantly. Be careful. Lu Ming shouted as the spear's radiance expanded and swept toward the 3 sword beams. At the same time, he pulled Xian Yanqing's hand and retreated frantically. Bang! Bang! With a few loud bangs, the spear ray exploded. Lu Ming was forced to retreat several miles by a huge force before he could stabilize himself. Lu Ming felt the qi and blood in his body churning and he almost vomited blood. His eyes were burning with fire as he looked at Dandan and gritted his teeth. This is the level of the top 10 war beasts. Are you trying to kill us? Cough, cough. Lu Ming, calm down. Don't get too excited. I made a mistake and misjudged you. It won't happen next time. It definitely won't. Dandan also felt a little embarrassed and coughed a few times. Lu Ming was really speechless. This guy was really unreliable. However, he was the only one who could be relied on. Lu Ming secretly swore that he must increase his inscription level as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be too dangerous to keep relying on this thing. Dandan ran to the front again and observed carefully. After a while, he ran back and said with confidence, "Don't worry. There won't be any mistakes this time. Go ahead boldly. I'd be a fool to believe you." Lu Ming muttered in his heart. This time, he and Xian Yanqing were even more careful. Boom! A small lake suddenly stirred up, and a blade light burst out. Nest! Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing turned and ran. This time, they were much more careful. If anything went wrong, they would turn and run. They were safe. You old turtle, are you trying to trick me? Lu Ming was furious. Cough, cough, my mistake, my mistake. Young man, calm down, calm down. It's not good to get angry at such a young age. Look at that girl, how calm is she? Dandan said awkwardly. Lu Ming, I want to braise this little turtle. Xian Yanqing said coldly. Dandan's whole body trembled and she ran forward. I'll observe for a while more. There's no mistake this time. Just like that, he stumbled forward. The further they went, the closer they were to the palace, but the more inscription formations they saw. There were 2 figures hundreds of miles ahead of Lu Ming and the rest. One of them was Yun Luo, the old ancestor of the Cloud Sea Alchemy Academy. The other was a middle-aged man who was only a peak-tier king. At this moment, the middle-aged man's face was pale as he said, "Senior, it's too dangerous up ahead. If you let me scout the way, only death will await us." "Oh, if you don't go and scout, you'll die now. It's your choice," Yun Luo said coldly. The middle-aged man's face turned even paler. He originally had 3 companions, but they were captured and scouted the way for him. The other 3 companions had all died because they scouted the way. Now, it was his turn. Still not moving forward? If you go and explore the path, you still have a chance of survival. We'll soon reach the palace, and perhaps after passing through this section, there will be no more danger. You may still be able to live, But if you don't act, I'll kill you now. Yun Luo's voice was cold. The middle-aged man's expression changed. In the end, he gritted his teeth and flew forward carefully. The formation here was extremely wondrous. One would only be safe if they advanced through the gaps. Otherwise, even if they flew past, they could trigger the formation. Furthermore, there was even a formation in the air. The means of a rank 7 true inscription alchemist were already unfathomable. The middle-aged man focused his mind and walked left and right for more than 10 miles without any trouble. Just as he heaved a sigh of relief, inscriptions glowed in the air and a battle sword formed, cutting the burly man in half. Damn it, useless trash. Yun Luo growled. Now that the last person to scout the way for him was dead, how was he supposed to enter? Even if his cultivation was strong and he could break through some formations directly, there were some formations that even he could be killed by. He didn't dare to take the risk. Just as he was hesitating, a few figures were coming over and appeared behind him. Yun Luo turned around, and after seeing the person clearly, his eyes were filled with cold killing intent. They were Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. When Yun Luo saw Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing, they naturally saw her as well. Yun Luo, it's you old man? Lu Ming was slightly stunned. It was beyond his expectations. He had not seen Yun Luo's figure in the battle with the sea beasts before, but now, he saw Yun Luo here. This guy had hidden in the middle of a great battle. When there were benefits, he had appeared. Chapter 674. 674 Killing Yun Luo. Ha ha ha, you two little bastards, you've come at the right time. Be good and help me find the way. Yun Luo laughed out loud, her face extremely ferocious. It was because of Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing that he was besieged by 4 powerful young men and lost an arm. Originally, he was already about to break through to the 2nd level of the spiritual ocean tier, but because he lost an arm, his vitality was greatly damaged. Not only was it difficult for his cultivation to break through, it even showed signs of declining. Right now, his cultivation could only barely maintain at the peak of the 1st level of the spiritual ocean tier, and after losing an arm, his battle power dropped a little compared to before. His hatred for Lu Ming and the rest could not be washed away even with the Yellow River. To scout the way for you, Yun Luo. You wish. Why don't you go and scout the way yourself? Lu Ming glanced at the middle-aged man's corpse and sneered. Compared to the time when they fought with Yun Luo, his and Xian Yanqing's combat strength had greatly improved. Why would they be afraid of Yun Luo now? However, Yun Luo did not know that he had been besieged by the 4 young masters before he was defeated. Now, there were only Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. He was 100% confident that he could suppress them. You're not going to scout the way? If you don't, I'll kill you right now, Yun Luo said coldly. This sentence is exactly what I wanted to say to you. Last time, you ran away. This time, you can stay. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with killing intent as he strode forward. Xian Yanqing and Lu Ming walked side by side towards Yun Luo. You're looking for death. Yun Luo growled and waved her arm. 2 rings of fire appeared and shot towards Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. Boom. Lu Ming's long spear expanded and the 3-colored concept revolved around it. The spear shot out and collided with the 2 rings of fire. There was a loud bang and the 2 rings were blasted back by Lu Ming. You! Yun Luo's expression changed drastically as she exclaimed, how can you be so strong? Sky Demon Force Field, Destruction Cut, Kill, Xian Yanqing shouted and pushed with her hand. A powerful force field of the Sky Demon enveloped Yun Luo, and the destructive cutting force exploded. Not good. Yun Luo's expression changed again. She kept waving her hand and exploded with all her strength. Rings of flame appeared to resist the cutting power from all directions. The explosions continued, and sparks flew everywhere. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lu Ming's long spear trembled and instantly, dozens of spear gleams shot towards Yun Luo. Under Xian Yanqing's intentional control, the demonic energy field did not affect Lu Ming's attack at all. Bang! Bang! Yun Luo was at a complete disadvantage against the combined forces of Xian Yanqing and Lu Ming. How is that possible? How was that possible? How did these two little bastards become so strong? You should die. Yun Luo was horrified and tried her best to resist. However, his combat strength was not as good as before. He was no match for Lu Ming and his partner and was completely suppressed. In a short while, 2 wounds appeared on his body, caused by the destructive cutting power. If he had not dodged in time, he would have been cut in half. Let's go, let's go. If this continues, I'll definitely die. Yun Luo frantically retreated, but he was enveloped by the sky demon force field and his speed was much slower. No matter how much he retreated, Xian Yanqing would move forward and keep him under his protection. Whoosh! His neck was cut by the spear ray, and a bloody mark appeared, almost piercing his throat. Ah! He roared. He was really afraid. He was afraid that he would die here. More and more wounds appeared on his body. Spare me, please spare me. I can give you supreme spiritual crystals. How about 10 million? Yun Luo shouted. However, Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing's attacks became even more violent. 20 million, I'll give you 20 million, please spare me. Yun Luo shouted. Bang! Bang! Lu Ming's footwork responded to him. Lu Ming strode forward and the distance between him and Yun Luo was getting closer and closer. His attacks became more and more violent. As long as we kill you, your wealth will be ours. Why do we need you to give it to us? A slightly mocking voice came out of Lu Ming's mouth. Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Ming turned into a spear ray and shot out. An extreme strike. Pu Kai. The spear light pierced through Yun Luo's heart. Yun Luo roared loudly, her voice filled with unwillingness. If he had known that he would end up like this, he would not have come to the Rainbow Island this time. The result of this was death. Bang! Lu Ming's long spear shook. Yun Luo was dead. He reached out and swallowed Yun Luo's blood essence. As soon as Yun Luo's blood essence entered the 9 dragons' bloodline, there was a violent boom. The energy was too terrifying. Lu Ming had to refine it immediately. Little Qing, I'm going to cultivate for a while. Please protect me. With that, Lu Ming sat down cross-legged and focused on refining the blood essence. Xian Yanqing looked at Lu Ming curiously. She did not understand why Lu Ming suddenly wanted to cultivate again. After refining for half a day, he finally refined all of Yun Luo's blood essence. Roar! The bloodline of the 9 dragons emerged and roared at the sky. Suddenly, another chakra emerged above the 8 bright chakra. The 9th Silivara chakra was a 9th level king level bloodline. Xian Yanqing's eyes suddenly widened and his mouth was slightly open. He was in disbelief. Bloodline upgrade, this guy's bloodline can actually upgrade. No wonder this guy has always been so abnormal. Every time my strength has improved greatly, I can't surpass him. Xian Yanqing's eyes flickered. The light of the 9th chakra was dimmer than that of the other 8, which was because it had not reached its peak. After a while, the 9 dragons' bloodline disappeared into Lu Ming's body. He opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw a beautiful face in front of him. Her eyes were wide open and she was staring at him without blinking. She was only a few inches away from his face. Lu Ming could even feel Xian Yanqing's breathing. Lu Ming was shocked and asked, "What are you doing? You want to take advantage of my cultivation and take advantage of me. Taking advantage of you? You wish." Xian Yanqing pouted, then looked at Lu Minute curiously. "Your bloodline can actually be upgraded. How amazing." Lu Ming's expression was calm. He was not surprised. He had no intention of hiding from Xian Yanqing when he was cultivating just now. In fact, even if he avoided it, Xian Yanqing would have guessed it. After all, he had known Xian Yanqing for a few years. Xian Yanqing was well aware of his bloodline level back then. Now that his bloodline level had increased, Xian Yanqing must have been suspicious. My first bloodline has the ability to devour the blood essence of humans and demonic beasts to increase the level of my bloodline. Lu Ming did not hide anything and said. However, he didn't say the first bloodline's name. It wasn't that he didn't trust Xian Yanqing. On the contrary, he trusted Xian Yanqing. However, this matter was too important. If anything happened, not only him, but Xian Yanqing would be in danger as well. There's actually such a wondrous ability. How wondrous! Xian Yanqing's eyes lit up as he exclaimed. You're the only one I've told about this. I hope you won't tell anyone else. Otherwise, I'm going to be taken away for research. Lu Ming said. You really only told me one? Xian Yanqing blinked. Chapter 675. 675 I'll choose something else. Of course, I didn't even tell my parents. Lu Ming said. Hehe, I'm the only one you've told. Xian Yanqing's face revealed a bright smile, and his eyes were full of joy. Then you'll have to listen to me obediently in the future. Otherwise, hehe. Xian Yanqing revealed a pair of beautiful tiger teeth and chuckled triumphantly. Listen to you? That's good. Lu Ming walked toward Xian Yanqing with a smile. Really? Xian Yanqing's eyes lit up. Buzz. Lu Ming suddenly picked Xian Yanqing up by the waist and slapped him on the butt. He smiled and said, Fake. How dare you threaten me? I'll spank your butt. Xian Yanqing was stunned for a moment before his face turned red. He shouted, Lu Ming, you dare to hit me. Hit my. I'm not done with you. Damn, it's not the first time I've tried it. Hey, the feel has gotten better. It's even more bouncy than before. Lu Ming muttered. Lu Ming. Xian Yanqing shrieked. Her vital essence burst forth and she escaped from Lu Ming's evil clutches. She gritted her teeth and glared at Lu Ming. However, her face and even her ears were red, adding to her shyness and making her even more beautiful. Little Qing, you're so beautiful, Lu Ming said subconsciously. Xian Yanqing blinked her big eyes and blushed even more. Suddenly, a bright smile appeared on her face. Mph, you have good taste. I'll let you off this time. This works too. His expression changed way too quickly. Lu Ming was dumbfounded. Nest, I can't stand it anymore. You're talking about love in front of me. Damn it, damn it. I must have 3,000 harem members. I'll anger you to death, anger you to death. Dandan mumbled and ran to the front to observe the array. Lu Ming found it funny. He then looked at Xian Yanqing and said, Little Qing, what about you? You're hiding a lot of secrets from me, aren't you? What secret do I have? Xian Yanqing blinked. You don't have any. For example, I've seen your sister before. Lu Ming asked. At the mention of this, Xian Yanqing's face darkened and he didn't say anything. After a long while, Xian Yanqing finally spoke. It's not that I want to hide it from you, but now is not the time to tell you. It's not the time to say it yet. Why? Lu Ming had some doubts. It's very simple. It's because your cultivation base is too weak. When you're strong enough, I'll naturally tell you. After Xian Yanqing finished speaking, he stopped talking. Strength. It seems that little Qing's background is really not simple. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Since Xian Yanqing did not want to talk about it now, Lu Ming did not continue asking. She studied the inscriptions carefully. After a moment, she continued to guide Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing as they continued on their way. A few hours later, they finally passed through the layers of inscription formations and arrived in front of a mountain peak. On the mountain peak, there was a palace. There shouldn't be any more inscription formations in front, so we can reach the peak directly, Dandan said. Although Dandan had said so, Lu Ming still did not dare to be careless. He headed to the mountain peak cautiously. At the peak of the mountain, there was a huge palace with golden walls. In front of the palace, there was a huge square. The square was completely paved with white jade and was extremely luxurious. As soon as Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing arrived at the peak, they stopped, their eyes solemn. Spiritual practitioner Han Dao, the crimson old monster, and that flood dragon. Lu Ming stared at the white jade square, his eyes filled with surprise. The spiritual warrior Han Dao, the crimson old monster, and the flood dragon were all in the square. However, both sides seemed to be in trouble. On the white jade square, inscriptions were densely packed and black, like small black snakes slithering, forming an inscription array. Spiritual practitioner Han Dao and the crimson old freak were covered with runes. The black runes kept drilling into their bodies. The two of them stood in the square and tried their best to resist. However, it was difficult for him to move his body. On the other side of the square, the flood dragon was facing the same situation. It had transformed into a human and was standing on the square. Countless inscriptions were also drilling into its body from all directions. What a wonderful inscription formation! The inscriptions seemed to be alive. Lu Ming stared at the inscription on the white jade square, his eyes filled with surprise. On the square, spiritual practitioner Han Dao and the rest also saw Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. The spiritual warrior Han Dao and the crimson old monster were both surprised. They didn't expect that there would be someone else who could make it here. Furthermore, it was a young man and a young woman. Judging from their cultivation, they were only peak king tiers. In the next moment, spirit warrior Han Dao's eyes flashed with ecstasy. In the depths of his ecstasy, there was a trace of cold light as he shouted, "You too, you've come at the right time. Now that the flood dragon is trapped by the inscription formation, it can't move. You two go kill it now. No, little brother, you go alone and leave the girl." Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. "Senior, that flood dragon is too powerful. I'm afraid I can't kill it." "Why can't you kill him? He's trapped and can't move at all. If he moves, he'll be killed by the inscription formation. How can you not kill him when you're attacking his vital parts?" Spiritual being Han Dao shouted. "How about this? The two of us will attack the flood dragon together, so we'll have a higher chance of winning." Lu Ming pointed at Xian Yanqing. "No, that girl has other things to do. Hurry up and do it, don't miss this opportunity." Spiritual being Han Dao shouted. "Senior, I still don't think I can do it alone," Lu Ming said. "Of course. Kid, you should know who I am. I'm a spiritual practitioner with a cold saber. Now, I order you to kill that flood dragon immediately." Spiritual practitioner Han Dao's face darkened and he ordered. Lu Ming sneered. This old fellow finally could not hold back and revealed his true colors. Lu Ming sneered. "Although I'm not talented, I do have some understanding of inscriptions. This formation is extremely mysterious. If I attack the flood dragon, even if I can kill him, I will be trapped in the formation. With my cultivation, if I'm trapped in this formation, I will die. You want me to do it alone and leave my friend behind because you want her to help you crack the formation base around the square, right?" The spiritual practitioner Han Dao's face turned even gloomier. He did not expect that Lu Ming could see through his thoughts at such a young age. That's right, that was his plan. "You're quite smart, kid, but do you have any other choice? If you don't do as I say, when I come out, both of you will die. I advise you to do as I say, and that little girl may still live, and you can die a quick death." The spiritual being Han Dao sneered, revealing his ferocious face. "Oh, really? Do we have no other choice? How could that be? We can just go around the side and enter the main hall, obtain the treasures inside, and then swagger away. Isn't that a better choice?" Lu Ming said with a smile. "Junior, you dare? If you dare to do this, I swear I'll make you wish you were dead." The cold saber spiritual being's voice was extremely cold. Chapter 676. 676 The Blood of a True Dragon. Lu Ming sneered. This spiritual practitioner Han Dao was really shameless. Previously, when he was fighting the flood dragon, in order to escape, he did not care about the life and death of others. He let others block the flood dragon for him while he escaped. In fact, with the spiritual practitioner Han Dao's strength, it should not be a problem for him to resist the flood dragon for a while and delay until the red monster and the others arrived. However, he would not do that. He would rather let others sacrifice their lives so that he could try his best to protect himself. Now, he actually wanted to do the same thing again. He wanted Lu Ming to risk his life to kill the flood dragon. After killing the dragon queen, he would ask Xian Yanqing to attack the array base. Did he think that the others were fools? If he didn't agree, he would threaten him. So what if he was at the 3rd level of the spiritual ocean tier? "Old man, I have a weakness. I hate it when people threaten me. The more they threaten me, the more I'll go against them. As I said before, I happen to know some inscriptions. It's been too long since this formation was inscribed, and its power has been greatly reduced. The spiritual crystals in some places have been depleted. It seems that I need to replenish some spiritual crystals. Lu Ming said calmly. Little bastard, you dare? The spiritual being Han Dao's face was cold. What's there to be afraid? You're nothing in my eyes. Lu Ming pursed his lips and flew to the side of the square. On the side of the square, there were some potholes, which were the array bases. On them, there were many supreme-grade spirit crystals. However, some of the spiritual crystals had already cracked and lost their spirituality. They no longer had any energy. Lu Ming pointed at a pit and swiped his finger. The useless spiritual crystal in the pit flew out. A perfect supreme-grade spiritual crystal appeared in Lu Ming's hand. He waved his hand and the supreme-grade spiritual crystal was embedded in the pit. The inscriptions around the pit brightened up a little. Stop, you stop. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao roared. Stop. Sure, but kneel down and beg me. Lu Ming turned his head and smiled at the spiritual practitioner Han Dao. Kneel down and beg you? Little bastard, who do you think you are? How dare you tell me to kneel down and beg you? The spiritual being Han Dao was stunned for a moment, then he roared. If you don't want to kneel, then forget it. Lu Ming's fingers kept moving, taking out pieces of useless top-grade spiritual crystals and embedding the intact ones. He was very fast and before long, he had embedded hundreds of top-grade spiritual crystals. The inscriptions of the formation became brighter and brighter, and its power became stronger and stronger. Little bastard, if I don't kill you, I'm not a human. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao's killing intent was bone-chilling and he hated Lu Ming to the bone. Roar. At this time, the flood dragon let out an earth-shaking roar and actually stepped towards the side of the square. As soon as it moved, the inscription formation started to run crazily. Countless inscriptions seemed to come to life and turned into swords and sabers, slashing at the flood dragon. The flood dragon roared loudly, and a heavenly halberd appeared in his hand. He swung it wildly, trying his best to block the attacks from all directions. Clearly, the flood dragon was very decisive. It knew that if this continued, the situation would become more and more disadvantageous for it. It wanted to rush out of the formation with all its might. Boom! Boom! The sabers and swords formed by the inscription formation were terrifyingly powerful. There were so many of them that it seemed like there was no end to them as they continuously hacked at the flood dragon. Even though the flood dragon's defense was astonishing, it was still cut open by the sharp sword, and blood flowed out. However, the flood dragon didn't care and madly charged out. With every step it took, the white jade ground would rumble. Countless inscriptions enveloped the flood dragon and even turned into flames that enveloped the flood dragon. Roar! With a deafening roar, the flood dragon returned to its original form, which was only a dozen meters long. Its body shot out beams of blue divine light as it slashed with the heavenly halberd. Even so, with every step the flood dragon took, a wound would appear on its body. At the same time, it had to face the burning of the flames. As expected of a flood dragon. What a strong body! Lu Ming was shocked. A human martialist would not have been able to withstand such an attack. However, the flood dragon held on and continued to charge out, getting closer and closer to the outside of the formation. Damn it! The spiritual practitioner Han Dao and the crimson old monster were burning with anxiety. If the flood dragon got out first, the treasures in the hall would fall into the flood dragon's hands. Little Qing, let's enter the main hall first. Lu Ming's expression changed. If the flood dragon came out, they would not be a match for it with their combat strength. The two of them walked along the side of the square and were about to rush towards the main hall. Stop! The flood dragon roared as its two dragon horns glowed with a brilliant light. Two rays of blue divine light, like two extremely sharp swords, pierced through the inscription formation and shot toward Lu Ming and the other man. Lu Ming blocked the attack with his infinite dragon spear. The tremendous force sent Lu Ming and Xie Nianqing flying backward. Buzz! The infinite dragon spear kept vibrating in his hand. Fortunately, it was a superior 6th-grade spiritual weapon. If it was a 5th-grade spiritual weapon, it would have been shattered by the blow. The flood dragon let out a long roar. It didn't care about its injuries and madly charged out, its speed greatly increasing. In just a few breaths, the flood dragon actually rushed out of the inscription formation, but in exchange, it was covered in wounds. There were at least dozens of wounds on the flood dragon's body. Its dragon scales were torn, and its blood and flesh were in a mess. Some of the wounds exposed its snow-white bones, and even the bones were cut open. However, the flood dragon's body was too strong, and its vitality was exuberant. Such a heavy injury only weakened its breath a little, but it did not fall down. It looked at Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing but did not make a move. Instead, it rushed into the hall. This flood dragon is rushing towards the hall in such a hurry. There must be some incredible treasure inside. Let's go in and take a look, Lu Ming said to Xian Yanqing. Xian Yanqing also nodded. Although the flood dragon was powerful, it was too severely injured to maintain its peak combat strength. If the flood dragon attacked them, they were confident that they could escape together. That was why they dared to follow it. The two of them followed the flood dragon and rushed into the hall. Damn it, damn you little bastard, the spiritual practitioner Han Dao roared. He didn't dare to charge in like the flood dragon, as he didn't have a strong body. Buzz, buzz. Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing, and the flood dragon rushed into the hall one after another. The hall was very wide. As soon as he rushed into the hall, Lu Ming felt an immense pressure. Even his 9-dragon bloodline was agitated. A red light filled Lu Ming's spine. That's... Lu Ming looked at the center of the hall in shock. There was a ball of fresh blood floating there. On the surface of the ball of blood, there were tiny true dragons swimming around. A huge pressure spread out. This pressure was like the pressure of the ancestor of all beasts, the king of all kings. It was extremely terrifying and could make all living things submit. True dragon, the blood of a true dragon. Before Lu Ming could speak, Dandan, who was on his shoulder, cried out first. The blood of a true dragon. Yes, this ball of blood was the blood of a true dragon. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing were both extremely shocked. They had never imagined that the 7-colored Daoist's palace would actually have a ball of true dragon's blood. Furthermore, this ball of true dragon's blood was clearly sentient, as if it had just flowed down from a true dragon. The value was high. Chapter 677. 677 The 7-colored Daoist. What was a true dragon? The supreme divine beast had been extinct for many years in the East Barren continent. Back then, Lu Ming had obtained a piece of the true dragon's finger bone. However, the bone had been around for many years and its spirituality had almost completely dissipated. There was not much essence left. However, the spiritual essence of this true dragon's blood had been completely preserved. Its value was incomparable. It was no wonder that the flood dragon was so desperate to rush into the hall. The temptation of a true dragon's blood to a flood dragon was too strong, so strong that it was beyond imagination. If a flood dragon swallowed this true dragon's blood, it would undergo an amazing transformation and have endless potential in the future. It seemed that the flood dragon had attacked the island because of the true dragon's blood. He wondered how the flood dragon knew that the 7-colored island had true dragon's blood. I want to eat it, I want to eat this true dragon's blood. Dandan's eyes widened, and she screamed loudly. She strode out with her 2 small legs and ran madly towards the true dragon's blood. At this moment, Lu Ming's 9-dragon bloodline emerged. He roared loudly, filled with an incomparable desire. Roar. The flood dragon roared and its body expanded rapidly. It whipped its tail and hit Dandan, sending her flying. Ah, you little worm, you dare to slap this lord. This lord isn't done with you. Dandan shouted and then hit the wall of the hall, directly hitting a pit and embedding itself inside. Little bug, you're dead, you're dead. Ayo, my old back. Dandan's cursing voice came out. Lu Ming was relieved. He knew that this guy had amazing defense and it would not be so easy for him to get into trouble. Roar. After the flood dragon sent Dandan flying, it directly pounced towards the blood of the true dragon. Stop it. Lu Ming strode forward, his long spear expanding rapidly as he charged at the flood dragon. Sky Devil Force Field. Xian Yanqing pressed his hand and the sky demon force field burst out, covering the dragon. Get lost. The flood dragon let out a loud roar as a huge halberd flew out and struck Lu Ming's spear radiance. The flood dragon's huge body trembled and Xian Yanqing's expression changed as he was forced back. The flood dragon was simply too powerful. Although it was only at the early stage of the second level of the spiritual ocean realm, it could suppress the spiritual practitioner Han Dao, who was at the peak of the third level of the spiritual ocean realm, and fight with 3 experts at the third level of the spiritual ocean realm. It was even possible that the old freak Lu Xian was killed by the flood dragon. Although the flood dragon was severely injured and its combat strength had been greatly reduced, its strength was definitely not weaker than the peak of the second level of the spiritual ocean realm. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing were no match for it. After repelling Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing, the flood dragon flew forward, opened its mouth, and swallowed the dragon blood in one gulp. Roar. After the flood dragon swallowed the dragon's blood, it let out an excited roar that shook the sky. A layer of blood-red light covered the flood dragon's body. Its injuries were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The effects of the dragon's blood were indeed astonishing, especially for the flood dragon. It had already taken effect so quickly. Not only that, but the aura on the flood dragon's body was also rising rapidly. Let's go, we need to leave this place. Lu Ming's expression was grave. Since they could not get the true dragon's blood, they had to leave as soon as possible. If they waited for the flood dragon to recover, it would be too late for them to leave. Bang! Dandan flew out from the wall and landed on Lu Ming's shoulder, still cursing. Who is it? Who are you? Get out, get out. At this moment, the flood dragon suddenly let out a crazed roar. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing were a little stunned. Were these words directed at them? But it didn't look like it. Lu Ming, look. There's something wrong with the flood dragon's eyes, Xian Yanqing said. Lu Ming looked into the flood dragon's eyes. Apart from excitement and ecstasy, there was also fear and horror in its eyes. Get out, get out, get out of my body. The flood dragon roared and its huge body actually rolled around in the hall. Ha ha ha, I've waited for 800 years and finally found a flood dragon. You want me to get out? How was that possible? Let this old man borrow your body. An old voice came out of the flood dragon's body. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing were extremely shocked. What was going on? It's fake. You deliberately left clues outside and left behind this true dragon's blood. It's all fake. The flood dragon roared madly. Ha ha ha, I didn't wait for 800 years in vain. I'll finally return to this world. The old voice laughed again. A layer of blood mist spread out from the flood dragon's head, making it look very strange. 7-colored day oyster. That's a 7-colored day oyster. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat and he thought of a possibility. But how was that possible? The 7-colored day oyster was only at the spirit embryo realm. How could he have survived until now? Furthermore, it looked like he was going to possess the flood dragon. Good move, good move. The 7-colored day oyster is a rank 7 true inscription refiner. He fused his consciousness into the mental energy fire and sealed it with the true dragon's blood. This way, it can be preserved for 800 years. As long as the flood dragon swallows the dragon's blood and the blood flows through its body, he can destroy the flood dragon's soul and occupy its body. Dandan's eyes flickered as she spoke. Ha ha ha. I didn't think that a little turtle would have so much knowledge. The ancient voice said. Get out, get out. The flood dragon kept shouting. What are you shouting for? It's your honor that your body is being used by this old man. In the future, this old man will let your name shake the world. The old voice sneered. Kill me now. As long as you kill me, it's useless for this old man to occupy my body. I'd rather die than have my body become a puppet. The flood dragon suddenly looked at Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. Juniors, if you dare to ruin this old man's plan, I'll make sure you die without a burial place. The 7-colored day oyster coldly shouted. Hurry up, I can't hold on much longer. If this old man takes over my body, he will definitely kill you all. He won't let anyone else know this secret. The flood dragon roared. His eyes flickered and his speech was no longer smooth. It seemed that he could not hold on any longer. His soul was about to be destroyed. The soul of a demonic beast was weaker than that of a human. Lu Ming, let's attack. The flood dragon is right. If the seven-colored daoist succeeds, he won't let us off, Xian Yanqing said. All right, let's do it. Lu Ming's gaze was firm. He had made up his mind and was ready to take action. Roar. The flood dragon let out a shocking roar. It actually stretched out a sharp claw and clawed at its own chest. What are you doing? The seven-colored daoist roared as if he was fighting for control of the flood dragon's body. This reduced the power of the claw, but the scales on the flood dragon's chest were still torn off, and blood flowed out. You guys attack here. This is the vital point. The flood dragon let out a deep voice. Chapter 678. 678 Chapter 678 Form Shifting Shadow Changing Talisman. Do it. Die. Lu Ming shouted in a low voice. He took a step forward and thrust his spear at the flood dragon's vital point. Don't even think about it. Now, you can all die. A purple figure emerged from the dragon's head. This figure was formed by mental energy fire. The purple mental fire represented a level 7 alchemist. It was an old man, but his face was extremely gloomy. He waved his hand and runes flew out. Buzz. At this moment, inscriptions began to flash in the hall, giving off a bright light. Whoosh. A combat sword flew out and slashed at Lu Ming's long spear. Lu Ming's body trembled and he quickly retreated. In the hall, countless runes glowed and enveloped Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. The seven-colored daoist had long since set up an inscription formation in the hall. It seemed like he had been prepared to kill anyone who entered the hall 800 years ago. Go to hell! The seven-colored daoist shouted coldly. He waved his hands and countless inscriptions flew out. The inscriptions in the hall glowed more and more. The black inscriptions wriggled like little snakes. Sky Devil Force Field. Xian Yanqing cast the Sky Demon Force Field to cover himself and Lu Ming. He used the energy of the Sky Demon Force Field to resist the inscription array around them. Sure enough, under the influence of the Sky Demon Power Field, the runes slowed down. Let's retreat. Since he couldn't kill them, he could only retreat. You want to leave? This old man says that no one can leave today, the seven-colored daoist sneered. He waved his hands and the inscriptions around him became even more terrifying. They formed swords and slashed at Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. These arrays had been around for 800 years, but their power was still not terrifying. Although the two of them tried their best to resist, they were still completely suppressed. They were in extreme danger. Damn it, you really think I'm just a decoration? Watch me. Dandan opened its mouth and spat out 3 jade tokens. It kept one for itself while the other 2 flew toward Xian Yanqing and Lu Ming. What is this? Lu Ming asked. The form-shifting shadow-changing talisman can shift forms and shadows in any place, even in this inscription formation. I've spent a lot of time to refine this talisman. Quickly crush it and kill that flood dragon, Dandan shouted. In this situation, he could only trust Dandan. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing took the jade talismans and crushed them. Instantly, a light screen enveloped them. Dandan also crushed a piece, and a light screen also enveloped him. Whoosh! Dandan's figure darted out like a phantom, and those inscriptions had no effect on it. How wonderful! Lu Ming had an idea and he dashed out as well. As expected, when he walked past, he was like a phantom. The runes passed through his body and did not have any effect. The form-shifting shadow-changing talisman, how do you have it? This ancient talisman has been lost for countless years. How do you have it? The seven-colored daoist called out in disbelief. Haha, who am I? During this time, I've been desperately refining a few. I originally wanted to save them for a few dangerous places, but I didn't expect to use them now. It's an honor for you to see this king's form-shifting shadow-changing talisman. Dandan laughed loudly, extremely proud. Kill. Lu Ming could not be bothered to waste his breath. He thrust his spear at the flood dragon. The flood dragon did not resist at all. It pointed its chest at Lu Ming and allowed him to kill it. Damn it! The seven-colored Daoist roared repeatedly as he tried his best to control the flood dragon's body to attack. Don't even think about it. The flood dragon clearly hadn't been completely taken over by the seven-colored Daoist yet, and it was also doing its best to control its body. A force field enveloped the dragon. Xian Yanqing walked over and used the Sky Demon force field to help imprison the dragon. Poochie. Lu Ming's long spear pierced into the flood dragon's chest. Here, the flood dragon's scales had already been grabbed off by itself, and its defense was greatly reduced. The extremely sharp spear radiance pierced through the flood dragon's muscles and heart like a piece of rotten wood. No. The seven-colored Daoist roared. Ha ha ha, old freak, you want to take over my body? Dream on. The flood dragon laughed crazily. Boom. Lu Ming's long spear shook and a violent vital essence surged into it, blasting the flood dragon's heart into pieces. Buzz. And NBSB, whoosh. At the same time, more than 10 combat swords formed by the inscription formation slashed at Lu Ming. Lu Ming pulled out his long spear and retreated. With a bang, the flood dragon's body fell heavily to the ground. Ha ha, old monster, your 800-year-old plan has finally failed. The flood dragon laughed carefreely. Slowly, his voice became softer and his life force slowly dissipated. Damn it, all of you will die today. The seven-colored Daoist let out a crazed roar. Before he died, he used a ball of true dragon blood to set up a trap and leave clues outside. He wanted to attract a flood dragon and then occupy its body. With the true dragon's blood as a medium, he was confident that he could succeed. The lifespan of demonic beasts was far longer than that of humans, especially for existences like flood dragons. With a long lifespan, the seven-colored Daoist would be able to explore even stronger realms. Unfortunately, now that the flood dragon was dead, it would be useless even if he took it. Refine. And NBSB, hoo. A layer of purple flames suddenly spread out from the flood dragon's body. The purple flames wrapped around the flood dragon and burned wildly. The flood dragon's body shriveled up as the flames burned, and the purple flames grew stronger and stronger. In the end, the purple flames gathered in the air and formed a human figure. It was the seven-colored Daoist. Retreat. For some reason, Lu Ming suddenly had a bad feeling. He pulled Xian Yanqing and quickly retreated out of the hall. You want to leave? Without the flood dragon, brat, your body is not bad, let me use it. The seven-colored Daoist grinned hideously. The purple flames turned into a stream of light and flew toward Lu Ming. It was fast, too fast. He crossed the hall in an instant. He was several times faster than Lu Ming and the rest. He was really like a ray of light. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing had just retreated to the entrance of the hall when the purple flame caught up to them. It shot directly between Lu Ming's brows and disappeared. This is bad. He's trying to take over Lu Ming's body and destroy his soul. Xian Yanqing's expression changed and his eyes were filled with worry. It's over. Little beauty, Lu Ming is finished. Your little lover is finished. Dandan shouted. What do we do? What to do? Was there any way to save him? Dandan, aren't you an expert? Quickly think of something. Xian Yanqing was extremely anxious, like an ant on a hot pan. His eyes were misty and he almost shed tears. At this moment, Lu Ming's glabella was covered with a layer of purple light. He sat cross-legged and seemed to be resisting with all his might. I do have an idea, but I don't know if you're willing to do it. Dandan touched her chin with one of her front claws. What method? Hurry up and tell me, I'll definitely agree. Xian Yanqing said anxiously. Is that so? All right, I know of a way. I want you and Lu Ming to cultivate the dual cultivation technique and have sex. This way, your soul can be transferred to Lu Ming's side and help him fight against the seven-colored Daoist. This way, your chances of winning will be much higher. Dandan said. Chapter 679. 679 A Great Opportunity. What? 2 days off. Xian Yanqing was dumbfounded. and then his face turned red. What's wrong? You don't want to? Then forget it, let's hurry and escape. Lu Ming's body will definitely be taken over by the old man. Sigh. Lu Ming sighed. Xian Yanqing bit his lips and his face turned red. He gritted his teeth and said, "All right, I've agreed, so you can leave now." "I'm leaving." "No need, you guys can start. I'll stay here and watch over you," Dandan said, her eyes darting around. "Where's the cultivation technique?" Xian Yanqing said. "Cultivation technique? What cultivation technique?" Dandan answered subconsciously. "That pair of cultivation technique." After that, Xian Yanqing's eyes flashed and he couldn't help but take a few more looks at Dandan. He saw Dandan's sneaky eyes rolling around and her mouth was grinning. She looked like she wanted to laugh but she was holding it in. "Dandan, are you lying to me?" "You're lying to me, aren't you?" Xian Yanqing's eyes widened. "Ha ha ha, little beauty, you've seen through me. Ha ha, I just wanted to see if you're concerned about Lu Ming. I didn't expect that I would be able to see through it with one try." Dandan finally couldn't hold it in and grinned. I'm going to eat you, you bastard." Xian Yanqing's face turned red and he gritted his teeth. He pounced over and grabbed Dandan, wanting to take a bite. Then, he cast a worried glance at Lu Ming and said, "Is Lu Ming really all right?" "Don't worry." That old man actually dared to set his eyes on Lu Ming. He's simply courting death. Moreover, Lu Ming is going to obtain a great fortune. This kid's luck is too good. Even I'm a little envious. Dandan said with a relaxed expression. "Are you really fine?" Xian Yanqing asked. "Of course I'm fine, I'm absolutely fine," she was very confident. Then, it saw Xian Yanqing's eyes glint fiercely as he stared at it with gritted teeth. Just now, he was actually fooled by Dandan. At the thought that she almost had a double break with Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing's heart raced and his face turned red. He wanted to find a hole to hide in. "I wonder if that guy heard it." "I don't think you heard it." At the thought that Lu Ming might have heard it, Xian Yanqing could not wait to braze Dandan. "Hey, what are you doing? Why are you looking at me like that?" "I'm doing this for your own good, you know? In any case, you'll have to do it sooner or later, so it's better to do it as soon as possible. Young people like to procrastinate, this lord is anxious to see it." Dandan shouted. "Who wants to do it with that fellow? Did that kind of thing? Old turtle, I burn." A ball of flame appeared in Xian Yanqing's hand and enveloped Dandan. "Nest, it's a murder." "No, it's a turtle." "Help!" Dandan shouted, and her four heads shrank into the turtle shell. The turtle shell glowed and blocked the flames. At this moment, a huge battle was going on in Lu Ming's sea of consciousness. How is that possible? Earth core flowing flame, your mental energy fire was ignited by earth core flowing flame. The seven-colored Daoist shrieked in fear. At this moment, the seven-colored Daoist's mental energy fire was completely wrapped in yellow flames. Earlier, when the seven-colored Daoist entered, he wanted to extinguish Lu Ming's mental energy fire and then replace it. However, he would never have dreamed that the essence of Lu Ming's mental energy fire was the core flowing flame. The earth core flowing flame was an extremely powerful flame. It was one of the most powerful flames in the world. Not only did the seven-colored Daoist fail to extinguish Lu Ming's mental energy fire, but he was also surrounded by it. Damn it, damn it. The seven-colored Daoist shouted. His purple mental energy fire transformed back into his human form. He waved his hands and a purple combat sword appeared, trying to break through the encirclement of Lu Ming's mental energy fire. And NBSB, hoo. Lu Ming's mental energy fire suddenly transformed into a huge underworld god. It held a long spear and stabbed at the seven-colored Daoist. This was the underworld god formed by the underworld god meditation. At this moment, Lu Ming was using the underworld god meditation. Bang! The seven-colored Daoist's combat sword was destroyed, but the spear didn't stop and continued to stab the seven-colored Daoist. The seven-colored Daoist let out a blood-curdling screech as his body was shattered, turning into a ball of purple flames that drifted backward before condensing back together. Mental fire cultivation method. You've actually mastered the mental fire cultivation method. The seven-colored daoist shrieked hysterically. His voice was filled with endless fear, and he seemed to be even more terrified than when he first heard about the earth core flowing flame. Die. The god of the underworld exuded a terrifying aura as he strode forward and thrust his spear forward. Run, run. The seven-colored daoist turned into a stream of light and ran. Where do you think you're going in my knowledge sea? In the next moment, the god of the underworld appeared in front of the seven-colored daoist and thrust his spear. With a phut, the seven-colored daoist was shattered again, turning into a ball of flames. In Lu Ming's sea of consciousness, he was the master here. He had complete control over this place. How could the seven-colored daoist escape? This time, the seven-colored daoist took a longer time to recondense the drifting flames. Spare me, young hero, spare me. The seven-colored daoist began to beg for mercy the moment he was formed. You wanted to kill me just now, and now you want me to spare you? Is that even possible? Lu Ming sneered. Young hero, as long as you spare me, I can teach you alchemy and the method of inscribing formations. I can grasp all my experience and teach you. The seven-colored daoist called out. Hehe, I'm not at ease facing an old monster like you. I'm more at ease when you're dead. Lu Ming was not moved at all. He continued to thrust his spear. Bang! The flames continued to be scattered. Then, Lu Ming turned into a ball of flame again and surrounded the seven-colored daoist's purple flame, burning it wildly. The seven-colored daoist shrieked miserably. His soul and consciousness were being burned by the earth core flowing flame and were slowly dissipating. No matter how he begged for mercy and cursed, Lu Ming was unmoved. A moment later, the seven-colored daoist's voice disappeared completely. His consciousness had been completely refined by Lu Ming, leaving only a ball of pure mental energy fire. And NBSB, hoo-hoo. At that moment, the seven-colored daoist's mental energy fire was being burned and refined. Wisps of it actually drifted toward Lu Ming's mental energy lamp. Initially, Lu Ming had only lit up 8 yellow spirit lamps. However, at that moment, the first 8 lamps continued to burn while the 9th lamp suddenly emitted a flame. Although it was just a small flame, it meant that Lu Ming had lit the 9th lamp. A rank 3 alchemist would have 9 lamps. He was only 1 lamp away from perfect. Moreover, as the earth core flowing flame continued to burn and refine the seven-colored daoist spirit fire, the flame of the 9th spirit lamp began to light up quickly and the flame became more and more intense. It was 108,000 times faster than when he was cultivating. Lu Ming was ecstatic and extremely excited. He could actually refine the seven-colored daoist's mental energy fire and use it to improve his own. A blessing in disguise. This was simply a blessing in disguise. Chapter 680. 680 Chapter 680 General Jade. Moreover, as the seven-colored daoist's mental energy fire was refined and fused with his, it also brought with it some scattered fragments. It was fragments of the seven-colored daoist's experience in alchemy, pill-making, and inscription formations. This was the seven-colored daoist's lifetime of experience in cultivating the path of inscriptions. It slowly merged with Lu Ming's mental energy fire and was mastered by him. Lu Ming simply wanted to laugh out loud. It was an opportunity, a supreme opportunity. After all, Lu Ming had only cultivated the inscription Dao for a short period of time. Although his mental energy fire was perfect at every level, he was still lacking in experience and knowledge. Although he had mastered millions of level 1, level 2, and level 3 inscriptions given to him by Dandan, he did not know how to combine them or how to use them. This was something that had to be explored slowly. This was experience. Now, however, he had refined the seven-colored daoist's mental energy fire and integrated it with his experience. Although the experience points were still scattered, as long as Lu Ming refined more and more mental energy flames from the seven-colored daoist, he would definitely gain more experience points. His knowledge of the Tao of inscription would definitely advance by leaps and bounds. Although the true dragon's blood had already been burned dry by the seven-colored daoist, it was enough for him to obtain such an opportunity. To Lu Ming, it was even more precious than a ball of true dragon's blood. At this moment, Lu Ming opened his eyes. In his sea of consciousness, refining the mental energy fire was not something that could be done in a short period of time. He was refining it at all times, and Lu Ming's mental energy fire was improving at all times. "Ha, kid, you've earned big this time, haven't you?" Dandan laughed when she saw Lu Ming opening his eyes. "Not bad, we've indeed earned big." Lu Ming smiled faintly. Xian Yanqing's face was still blushing. He blinked his big eyes at Lu Ming and then looked in other directions, as if he did not dare to look at Lu Ming. "Hey, little Qing, we seem to have other things to do just now. Why don't we continue now?" Lu Ming looked at Xian Yanqing with a smile. Xian Yanqing's face turned red. She knew that Lu Ming must have heard everything that had happened. "Continue, my ass. A big pervert with a perverted turtle, they are indeed jackals of the same tribe." Xian Yanqing gritted his teeth and turned away, his face red with embarrassment. He did not want to look at Lu Ming. "Little brat, I'm really kind this time, right? Hurry up and reward me with some spirit herbs." Dandan shouted. Not bad. You're a good friend this time. Here, a reward for you." Lu Ming took out more than 10 stalks of level 5 spiritual herbs and threw them to Dandan. She was overjoyed. She opened her mouth and swallowed them all. Lu Ming. At the sight of this, Xian Yanqing gritted his teeth. His eyes were as big as copper bells, and there was a raging fire in his eyes. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws as he pounced on Lu Ming. "Let's see what other treasures are in the hall." Lu Ming quickly changed the topic and dashed into the hall in a flash. After walking around the hall, he realized that there was nothing there. It was completely empty. Where were the treasures left behind by the 7-colored Daoist after his death? What about the storage ring? Why wasn't there any? Lu Ming was a little depressed. If he had known earlier, he would have forced the 7-colored Daoist to tell him where the treasure was hidden before killing him. It turned around and returned to the flood dragon's side. Unfortunately, the 7-colored Daoist had burned the flood dragon's blood and essence. Otherwise, the flood dragon's blood essence would be a great supplement, and even the real dragon's blood could be refined. This flood dragon's corpse is full of treasures. Put it away. Lu Ming waved his hand and kept the flood dragon's corpse into a storage ring. Xian Yanqing followed Lu Ming angrily. "Little Qing, let's go out," Lu Ming said with a smile. Xian Yanqing snorted coldly. He ignored Lu Ming and walked out. Lu Ming smiled and followed him out. When he arrived at the square, he found that the spiritual practitioner Han Dao and the other man were still trapped there. "Little bastard, stop right there. Where's the flood dragon? What treasure did you obtain? Hand it over," the spiritual practitioner called out as soon as he saw Lu Ming and the other man. "Idiot, you're really an idiot. I think you've lived for so many years in vain. In this situation, you're not kneeling down and begging me, but threatening me." Lu Ming shook his head and said in disdain. "Little bastard, what did you just say?" the spiritual practitioner Han Dao roared. Lu Ming shook his head. He could not be bothered to waste his breath. He replaced thousands of spiritual crystals around the formation, increasing the power of the formation. "The two of you, enjoy your time here." Lu Ming waved his hands and swaggered away with Xian Yanqing. Behind them, only the spiritual practitioner Han Dao and the red monster's angry roars could be heard. "I say, Dandan, that form-shifting and shadow-changing talisman of yours is quite useful. Make a few more of them when you have time." On the way, Lu Ming looked at Dandan in anticipation. "All right, give me the materials." "The shape jade." Dandan stretched out a claw and said. "Shape jade? What shape jade?" Lu Ming was stunned. "Of course it's the materials. How can I make it without the shape jade? I saw that you didn't have any either. I found the previous few when I saw you cleaning up other people's storage rings, so I went over to make a few form-shifting shadow-changing talismans." Dandan pouted and said. Lu Ming remembered that there was indeed a time when Dandan coaxed and pestered him and took a piece of jade from him. Initially, he thought that it was an ordinary jade. He did not expect it to be a shape jade. "Lu Ming, Let me tell you. The shape-shifting jade is very rare. With my current ability, I can only refine it and use it in a level 6 inscription formation. The formation that the 7-colored daoist set up is only as powerful as a normal level 6 inscription formation after so many years. That's why it can be used. So, don't even think about using the shape-shifting shadow-changing talisman to walk through all kinds of formations. That's not realistic. Dandan ruthlessly attacked. Lu Ming was depressed. He initially had that idea to let Dandan refine a bunch of form-shifting and shadow-changing talismans. Then, he would not have to fear any big arrays in the future. It seemed that there was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. The 2 people and 1 turtle followed the original path and left the area full of inscription formations without any danger. Let's go to other places and search for spirit herbs, Lu Ming said. Following that, they chose another direction and went to search for spirit medicines. Although the Rainbow Island was huge, it was still limited. This place had already been turned over. In the next 3 days, although the 2 of them had some gains, it was not much. However, Lu Ming's mental energy fire had changed drastically. His mental energy fire was increasing rapidly at every moment. In just 3 days, not only had he lit 10 spirit lamps at the 3rd rank, but he had also become a 4th rank alchemist. Now, he had already lit 8 green spirit lamps. A 4th level alchemist with 8 green lamps. In just 3 short days, Lu Ming's mental energy fire had advanced by a whole realm. However, he had only refined a small portion of the 7-colored daoist's mental energy fire in his spiritual sea. There was still a large portion that had yet to be refined. Chapter 681. 681 Spirit Warrior of the Cold War Saber. The 7-colored daoist was a 7th rank true inscription refiner. At every rank, he had at least 6 spirit lamps lit. How large was his spirit fire? Although Lu Ming lit up 10 spirit lamps at each level, he was only a 3rd level alchemist previously. He was still far from being a 7th level alchemist. For example, a martial grandmaster realm martial artist and a spirit embryo realm martial artist were worlds apart. Therefore, the spiritual fire of the 7-colored daoist was still causing Lu Ming's spiritual fire to continue to grow rapidly. Moreover, it contained fragments of the 7-colored daoist's experience. Lu Ming's experience in alchemy and inscription formations was becoming more and more abundant. Hey! Look, there's another palace up ahead. Xian Yanqing suddenly pointed to the front and said in surprise. Lu Ming looked over. Indeed, there was a mountain range in front of him. On one of the mountains, there was a palace. Could it be that the 7-colored daoist has more than one palace? Could it be that all his treasures are hidden in the palace in front? Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Obviously, Xian Yanqing had the same guess. Kill our way over and snatch all the treasures, Dandan shouted. Buzz, buzz. Lu Ming turned into 2 streaks of rainbow light and flew in that direction. But not long after, they stopped. In front of them, there were 2 rays of light, one in front and one behind, speeding towards them. In front of him was a golden sword light. In the sword light was a young man in his 20s. He was extremely handsome and exuded a powerful aura. Obviously, the young man was being chased by a light from behind. The ray of light behind him was an old man. Spiritual practitioner Han Dao. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing were shocked to see the old man behind them. The person chasing after him was actually spiritual practitioner Han Dao. But wasn't he trapped in the big array in the square? He had actually escaped and even appeared here. However, looking at the spiritual practitioner Han Dao's aura, he should have been severely injured and was far from his peak state. He was at most at the 2nd level of the spiritual ocean tier. Kid, hand over the treasure and I'll spare your life, the spiritual being Han Dao shouted. However, the young man had no intention of paying attention to them. He flew forward at top speed and flew past Lu Ming and the others. What? The spiritual practitioner Han Dao was in hot pursuit. He glanced at Lu Ming and was stunned for a moment before he shouted, "Little bastard, it's you. You deserve to die." With an angry roar, the spirit warrior Han Dao stopped chasing the young man and pounced on Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. His eyes were filled with deep hatred. From this, it could be seen how much he hated Lu Ming. He had directly abandoned the young man. Lu Ming's expression was grave and the infinite dragon spear appeared in his hands. Sky Devil Force Field. Xian Yanqing reached out his hand, and a huge Sky Demon power field covered the spirit warrior. However, the spiritual practitioner Han Dao was indeed powerful. Although he was injured, the vital essence in his body was still extremely powerful. His vital essence burst forth and broke through the Sky Demon force field, charging toward Lu Ming and the other man. Destruction cut. Cut. Xian Yanqing shouted again. Destructive cutting power burst out of the Sky Demon force field. The terrifying cutting power seemed to be able to cut open the space. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao shouted angrily. His body was covered in white ice, which looked like a suit of ice armor. He continued to rush forward. Kill. Lu Ming held the infinite dragon spear and rushed into the Sky Demon power field. The spear's gleam was aimed at the cold saber spiritual practitioner's throat. Lu Ming was not restricted in the slightest in the demonic power field, just like he was outside. The Sky Demon force field was completely under Xian Yanqing's control. Clang! The spiritual practitioner Han Dao slashed his saber and blocked Lu Ming's long spear. Lu Ming's body trembled and he retreated. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao's realm was too high. Even though he was injured, his combat strength was still terrifying. Little bastard, die. You will all die today. The killing intent in the eyes of the spiritual practitioner Han Dao was so strong that it couldn't be dispersed. 3 days ago, he and the red-haired old monster had been trapped in the formation for half a day and had almost died. Fortunately, there were other people who had arrived there and helped them to destroy the foundation of the formation. Although he had managed to escape, he had been severely injured and had yet to fully recover. One could imagine how much he hated Lu Ming and Lin Feng. Boom. Boom. The 9-dragon bloodline and his second bloodline were activated at the same time, and Lu Ming's combat strength increased greatly. 9th level king. Both bloodlines are 9th level king. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao cried out in disbelief as he was almost scared to death. When one's bloodline was activated, it was inevitable that one's bloodline level would be exposed. It was simply unbelievable that both of his bloodlines were king-class 9th level. Kill. Lu Ming shouted. After his blood meridian exploded, his combat strength increased and he charged towards the spiritual practitioner with the frost saber. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao wanted to kill him, so why wouldn't he want to kill him too? Otherwise, it wouldn't feel good to be targeted by such a despicable old monster. Who knew if the other party would do something behind his back? Die. This brat is too terrifying. He must die. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao was even more determined to kill Lu Ming. His blade glowed as he fought with Lu Ming. However, under the influence of the demonic power field, he was greatly affected. It would not be easy for him to defeat Lu Ming. I'll smash it. Dandan shrank back into the turtle shell and suddenly smashed towards the spirit warrior Han Dao's face. However, Sea of Soul Realm warriors who had comprehended the second-level intent could already control the nature's attributes to form armor that covered their entire body. They rushed over, but they only hit the ice armor on the face of the spirit warrior Han Dao. Nest, I haven't recovered enough. Otherwise, I would have smashed through that old man's ice layer. Dandan flew back to Lu Ming's shoulder and mumbled, looking for another chance to launch a sneak attack. Whoosh. At this moment, a golden sword light flew over. The golden-robed young man from before had actually returned. Before he had even arrived, a golden sword chi, extremely sharp, cut through the void and slashed towards the spirit warrior Han Dao. Brat, let's die together. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao shouted angrily and waved his blade to block the sword light. Buzz. The golden-robed young man appeared in the air and swept his gaze across the room. His eyes finally landed on Lu Ming. Shura. The king of hell. Lu Ming said. He could tell from this person's aura that he was the king of hell. The other party had obviously recognized him. How about we join forces? Kill this old man. The King of Hell spoke. Just what I wanted. Lu Ming had a smile on his face. Hell King's combat strength was extremely terrifying. With him, they could fight against the injured spiritual practitioner Han Dao. Golden light vibration sword. King Yama was straightforward and attacked directly. The dazzling golden sword Qi emitted an extremely sharp intent as if it could cut through everything. Hell King had comprehended the metal will and had reached level 2. The metal will was known for its sharpness. Xian Yanqing's sky demon force field naturally did not hinder the King of Hell. At the same time, Lu Ming appeared and thrust his long spear forward. A 3-colored true dragon flew out and pounced at the spirit warrior Han Dao. Facing the attacks of the 3 people, spiritual practitioner Han Dao slashed out blade lights towards the 3 people. With a loud boom, the 2 sides were evenly matched. Chapter 682. 682 Escaping into the Void. Then, the spear light, sword light, and saber light rose again and collided fiercely. Whoosh! Whoosh! Streaks of sword chi and saber chi shot in all directions. One could clearly see with the naked eye that there were traces in the nearby space. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao was injured and suppressed by the sky demon force field. On the other hand, Lu Ming and the King of Hell could unleash their full power. For a time, the battle between the 4 of them was extremely intense. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged dozens of moves. Boom! 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 At this moment, heaven and earth began to shake. The 4 of them could feel the Rainbow Island shaking violently, and the shaking was getting more and more intense. Not good. The 7-colored island is about to return to the void. Let's go. In the distance, a martial artist shouted. How do we leave? Fly to the sky. The 7-colored island is covered by the inscription formation. As long as you fly to the sky and break through the inscription formation, you can leave. Hurry. Buzz. And NBSB, whoosh. One could see streaks of light appearing from the mountains and flying into the sky at high speed. The expressions of Lu Ming and the rest changed. However, everyone was in a state of anxiety, and no one stopped. If one side stopped and the other side took advantage of the situation to attack, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. However, the 4 of them also consciously charged toward the sky, fighting as they flew. After flying for tens of thousands of meters, one could see that there was indeed a light screen above their heads, covering the 7-colored island. In the distance, rainbow lights kept bombarding the light screen, then breaking through it and disappearing. Boom! As the 4 of them fought, when they reached the edge of the light curtain was naturally pierced through, and the 4 of them rushed out. Lu Ming appeared outside and realized that he was floating in the air. Not far away, a part of the Rainbow Island had already escaped into the void. The remaining part was also constantly entering the void and would soon disappear. Around the 7-colored island, there were figures that kept flashing and appearing. They were the people who came from the 7-colored island. Clang! Not far away, a dazzling golden light flashed. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao and the King of Hell were closer to each other. He made the first move, wanting to kill one of them first before dealing with Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. How could Lu Ming let him have his way? He took one step with the 9 dragons' sky-treading steps and turned into a stream of light. He appeared behind the spiritual practitioner in an instant and directly greeted him with his long spear. Detestable. The King of Hell had been on guard against him. His sudden attack did not severely injure the King of Hell. On the other hand, Lu Ming's speed and reaction were terrifyingly fast. He arrived immediately, foiling his plan to severely injure the King of Hell in one fell swoop. Boom! The next moment, a huge pressure pressed down on Han Dao's body, and Xian Yanqing followed closely behind. This made the spiritual being Han Dao so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. Among the 3 of them, Xian Yanqing was the one who gave him the biggest headache. The suppression of the Sky Demon force field and the sneak attack of the destructive cutting made it impossible for him to use all his strength. Lu Ming and the King of Hell were in charge of the fierce attacks. He was confident that he could easily crush and kill any one of them alone, but it would be too difficult to deal with the 3 of them together. This area was boiling with excitement as the battle was extremely intense. The people nearby were all alarmed. That's the spiritual practitioner Han Dao. I guess they had a conflict on the seven-colored island. Most of the people around were peak-tier kings, and there were a few Sea of Soul Realm experts. All of them were shocked by this scene. Spiritual warrior Han Dao was a powerful existence at the peak of the third level of the spiritual ocean realm. They could see that his aura was weak and he should be injured, but this was already shocking enough. Many people stood in the air and watched from afar. Boom, boom, boom. The seven-colored island continued to sink into the void and soon disappeared. The commotion on the Rainbow Island shook the entire Golden Sand Island. Countless figures flew over and watched in shock as the Rainbow Island was about to disappear. At the same time, they were also shocked by the battle between Lu Ming and the others and the spiritual practitioner Han Dao. Feng Chuan, come and help me kill these three little bastard. Spiritual warrior Han Dao called out. He called an expert at the first level of the spiritual ocean realm who was watching nearby. Feng Chuan was an old acquaintance of the Cold Saber spiritual practitioner, but they were not close friends. At that moment, Feng Chuan's expression changed. Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing, and the King of Hell were too powerful. Even if he attacked, he might not be able to kill them in one blow. If they counterattacked, he might die here. Furthermore, the other party was still so young and had shocking potential. If he didn't kill them all, he would have to hide and not dare to appear when the other party broke through to the spirit ocean realm. Therefore, he hesitated and couldn't make a decision. Feng Chuan, what are you waiting for? Do you want to die? The spiritual being Han Dao threatened. Feng Chuan's expression turned ugly again. Kill. Xian Yanqing shouted and pressed his arm again. A beautiful arm formed. The arm was huge, and the palm alone was 10 meters wide. It pressed towards the spirit warrior. This was Xian Yanqing's bloodline martial skill. Gakudo Path Attack. Golden Light Tear. Lu Ming and the King of Hell also unleashed their strongest attacks. They had to end the battle as soon as possible. The longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao knew many people, but they were outsiders and didn't know many people. The three of them all used their strongest killing moves. The spirit warrior Han Dao's expression changed and he used all his power to defend. Bang! The three's power landed on the spiritual being Han Dao's body. The spiritual being Han Dao's blade light was destroyed, and the ice armor covering his body was also not cracked. He screamed and his body flew far away, spitting out a large amount of blood. Kill. Lu Ming and the other two pounced on the spiritual practitioner Han Dao crazily. Cold Blade Storm. An abnormal color flashed across the spiritual practitioner Han Dao's face. He slashed hundreds of times in an instant, aiming at Lu Ming and the other two. Break. The three of them joined hands to destroy the spiritual practitioner's Cold Blade Storm with one strike and then rushed towards him. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao's face turned pale. He was actually at a disadvantage. If this continued, he would be in danger. At this moment, a scarlet sword Qi crossed the void and slashed at Lu Ming and the other two. The three of them were shocked and blocked the sword light, but their bodies could not help but stop. Buzz. An old man in a red robe appeared and stood in front of the spiritual practitioner. It was the red-haired old monster. Haha, Red Dai, you're here. Good, let's kill these three little bastards together. Seeing the crimson old monster, the spiritual being Han Dao was overjoyed. However, Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing, and the King of Hell's faces turned grave. The three of them stood side by side, staring at the spiritual practitioner Han Dao and the crimson old monster. The spiritual practitioner Han Dao alone was already hard enough to deal with, and now there was the crimson old monster. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,